Lamar's toe hit out of bounds. It's an incomplete pass. The game is over. Kansas City has won.
27-20. The Chiefs win on opening night by a toe.
Literally by a freaking toe, Diesel. I have never, well, I can't say never, Kevin Durant against Phoenix, very similar situation a few years ago, but I have not in the NFL seen a close call where literally the toenail was the reason that the touchdown didn't count and the Ravens fall. You predicted it right. You had the Chiefs winning, and the Chiefs did get the win last night, 27-20 to start the NFL season.
Just a phenomenal football game to get the season started. I mean, you can't ask for anything more than what we got. You can ask that maybe Lamar Jackson spend a little bit of time reviewing the rule book, because after the game, Lamar Jackson was asked about that touchdown that would be game tying touchdown. Excuse me, that would be game tying. And it could have been a game winning because Harbaugh said we're going for two. We're going for two. But Lamar Jackson had this to say in the post game press conference.
I thought it was a touchdown. But still think it's a touchdown. I threw it so he can make a play on it. Just so I don't throw it like a line job to hit him in the face mask and they turn around and pick the ball. So I gave him the ball so he can jump a little bit. But I thought he did a great job, acrobatic catch, and I believe it was 2 feet in. I'm going to stand on that.
I mean, maybe I'm going to give Lamar the benefit of the doubt and say maybe he hadn't gone back and watched the replay. Maybe he didn't look up at the Jumbotron, where I'm sure they were showing that replay again and again and again. Lamar, it's dead clear and obvious. Every camera angle they showed the exact same thing clearly. That Isaiah Likely's toe, was it Isaiah Likely or was it a different receiver?
I believe it was Isaiah.
That his toe was on the line.
Yeah, Coastal Carolina boy, by the way.
Yeah, everybody could see that his toe was on the line. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, stand on it.
I don't know, Diesel, just talking about that before we get into the actual game. I mean, you know what stinks about sports sometimes? That was a phenomenal play. To Lamar's point, it was a fantastic catch, a great job to get both feet down. Yeah. However, the letter of the law says what you just said. He was out. It was clear that it was out, and you almost feel for him, like I do, not having a dog in the fight in terms of pulling for the Ravens or the Chiefs last night. I was pulling for points. I had the over. I ended up taking the over right before the game started. But you almost feel for him, man. You almost feel for a guy like Isaiah Likely making a spectacular play. And we're talking, I don't even know if it was an inch.
Here in the South, they'd call that a frog's hair.
A frog's hair. That's how close it was, man.
Tight.
And again, Isaiah Likely, he was very upset after the game. Coastal Carolina boy, but you know what?
Should have stayed in bounds.
He should have stayed in bounds, and Patrick Mahomes even had one better than that. Did you hear what he said? Should have wore a different color cleat, says Mahomes.
Because it looked good from my angle on the sideline, but then the first view you could see the cleat. So that's a great football team, and I'm sure we'll see him again at some point in the playoffs. So now we're happy with the win now, and he's got to wear white cleats next time. That's what it is.
He's got to wear white cleats next time.
I'm going to be real with you, Cole. I was watching that game in bed last night, struggling, fighting off the sleep. When that catch was overturned, I said, "Thank God! I just want to go to bed."
So I'll tell you what happened to me. Mine's even worse than that. I fell asleep during halftime. Woke up to start the second half because, the game got delayed, 45 minutes?
How old are we, by the way?
I know, it's terrible, but
can't make it through a game.
I hit a wall last night. That game didn't start till 9? Almost 9 o'clock?
Yeah, there was a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Oh,
I tuned in at 8:15 thinking, okay, we're going to see these guys on the field getting ready for opening kickoff.
Psych.
Nope. Then we got to have somebody I've never heard of come out there and sing a song. And then they had to do the national anthem. And then they had to run all those vignettes with those fancy graphics that they made. It's like, good God, get to the game.
Honor the Super Bowl, right? They did the Super Bowl.
Start that stuff 45 minutes before kickoff and have kickoff be 8:20 like you say it's going to be.
Well, I didn't even understand, if it's raining, Play the freaking game. Why are we pushing this thing off? Because of the ceremonies? Are we kidding right now?
Was it rain?
Or whatever. I don't know why they pushed. I didn't lightning something for whatever reason they pushed the game back.
Here's a novel idea. Every time I bring it up, this gets pushed back. Put a dome on every stadium.
Or play in the rain.
A retractable, closable roof on every stadium in the NFL. You don't have to use it all the time. Just have it. Just have it as a just in case, a backup to cover for extremely inclement weather. Could we do that, please?
Starting a game, man, at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, it's tough. So I fell asleep at halftime, woke up, for whatever reason, I don't know why. Here's what I did, Diesel. I paused the game. I probably did it on accident. I paused it, fell asleep. It ended up saving me. I woke up super early this morning, like 5 a.m., 5:30, wide awake, couldn't go back to sleep.
Why would you do that?
I have no idea. Watched the rest of the game from like 5:30 to 7 this morning. So I took a super long nap last night, woke up, watched the rest of it, and probably saw the toe catch at, I don't know, somewhere around 7:05 this morning. It was pitiful. But I'll tell you what, man, I felt so bad. Like I was struggling to stay awake. I felt like I was 90.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
The game was too late.
Welcome to it. It's gone. It's over. If I go to try to finish a game in bed, I'm not going to finish that.
No,
game.
I agree with you.
I'm not going to do
tough.
it. It's like we got a dog now that has like a bedtime. He's got to be in his kennel, lights out, 10:30. So then we go upstairs. If I do that, if it's past then, I might be able to last another 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. Watching a game. But I am not making it to the end.
It's Wire to Wire. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. The Ravens fell last night 27-20 to the Kansas City Chiefs. I have several thoughts on the game. Diesel, we picked yesterday. I picked the Ravens. You took the Chiefs before the show was over. I last night did not make a decision in what I was going to do until 8:30. At 8:30, I decided to take the over. The over hit last night. I had people telling me during the game not to take the over. Rob Brown tweeted at me, said he took the under. I got worried. I almost bought into peer pressure and tried to do a little live bet, but I didn't. Ended up hitting last night, so I'm 1-0 on the week for the points going over last night. 27-20 got me the win with the over. Getting into the game itself, I'm sorry. I didn't
I was going to say, I was impressed with Derrick Henry, the way he performed last night. And I'm just looking at just surface level stats here outside of the total number of yards, which Baltimore has the edge on that one by almost 100 yards. They were pretty even. 1 turnover apiece, 25 first downs for Baltimore, 21 first downs for Kansas City. Not a huge discrepancy in the time of possession. Again, 100-yard advantage to Baltimore there. And even when you look at Lamar and Patrick's stats, very, very similar to the total number of yards that they threw for. 273 for Lamar, 291 for Patrick, a touchdown for each, an interception for Patrick Mahomes. This was about as even as you can get to start the football season. I mean, how often do we see it? We see it in college football every year. We saw it a ton in week 1. You see these just mismatches and you say, ugh, what was the point in even tuning in to watch this? Wake me up in week 3 when they actually start playing somebody.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. I want to go back to Derrick Henry because you brought him up. I'll disagree with you. I was not impressed with Derrick Henry last time. I'll tell you why in a few minutes from now. I have about 4 or 5 thoughts on the game. My first thought was the very first drive, Diesel, I watched Lamar and the Ravens go down and score. And after watching that first drive, it looked as if Lamar Jackson was the best. I mean, it was so smooth last night. However, after watching all 4 quarters, even this morning, Lamar Jackson, for as good as he is, Diesel, I love him. I'm a big Lamar fan. Mm-hmm. He's not Mahomes. And I don't mean statistically. I don't mean in terms of his ability, what his God-given gifts are. I mean in terms of being able to will your team to win. You look at the stats. You said the Patrick Mahomes-Lamar Jackson comparison last night was close. I was very disappointed on Lamar or with Lamar on that very last drive when he absolutely air melted and had a guy wide open in the end zone. That was pitiful. So as big of a Lamar Jackson fan as I am, there's something, Diesel, that when you watch Patrick Mahomes play, there's something about it that you just feel like you're watching greatness. You watch Lamar and you're
clutch.
Like, it's clutch.
That's the only way to describe it. There's no tangible way to describe clutch. You have it in the biggest situations or you don't.
You watch Lamar and you think, man, this guy's uber talented. This guy is going to be a very good quarterback in the league for a long time. And you're just impressed with how flashy he is. And he's lost 15 pounds and he's skinny this year and he's just so fast. But there's something about Patrick Mahomes that when we talk about sports over the years, Diesel, I mean, going back 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, there's so many talented guys. However, there's only a handful, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only a handful of guys that you can say without a shadow of a doubt has that it factor, right? As good as Lamar is, I love Lamar. I'm a big Lamar fan, but Lamar Jackson doesn't have the it factor. Patrick Mahomes, yes, he's talented. Yes, he's fast. He's flashy at times, but there's something in that guy's DNA. He has it.
Just random thought here. You're talking about goats. Do you know what a gathering of goats is called? If you talk about a gathering of crows, it's called a murder.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a gathering of owls, it's called a parliament. A gathering of goats is called a tribe. Yeah, a tribe.
I like that.
And sorry, Lamar, you're not a member of that tribe. You have been voted off the island. You are no longer a member of that tribe. I mean, you even look at Lamar Jackson's stats and his rushing yards. That's greatly inflated by one drive where he had 2 plays almost back to back. I think they might have been. I think it was somewhere in the third quarter, maybe early fourth quarter, where he ran for 2 big gains in the same drive. And you take those 2 away. And I know that's not how stats work. You can't really take 2 away because they happened, right? But one drive right there takes away probably 40 to 50 yards off of his rushing total, which still would have him being the leading rusher for the Baltimore Ravens. But see, that's why I was impressed with Derrick Henry. And he was making big plays. They didn't give him the ball a lot. He only carried the ball 13 times, didn't pick up many yards, 46. But I think Derrick Henry still is a guy that can command enough respect that when you see him on the field, you got to really focus on getting him down because he's still a load to take down. And that means Lamar Jackson can bounce out and create based off of the defense having to crash down on Derrick Henry.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to go there next, and we'll get to the illegal formation call that happened like a million times as well. However, when you talk about Derrick Henry, I agree with you on what you just said about having to account for him. I wasn't impressed with his actual rushing last night, only 3.5 yards per carry. I don't feel like he was, it didn't seem like he was in the best game shape he's ever been in. Here's what I will say, though. There's one play in particular last night. If you watch that game, Tolos, there's one play to where I will agree with your point, Diesel, about having to account for him. And I can't remember if it was in the first quarter or the second quarter. I know for a fact it was in the first half, and I think it was in the first quarter. But it was a third down, and Lamar Jackson had Derrick Henry to his left. It was a crucial down, ball snapped. Lamar fakes the handoff to Derrick. Derrick crashes in the center of the offensive line. And as he crashes, the entire defense just folds around him. And Lamar kept the ball and ran to the left for a first down that was as pretty of a play that you've ever seen. So to your point about having to account for him, I do believe that is where they will be better this season. At the end of the day, though, last year in the playoffs, when these two teams played in the AFC Championship game, having less than 40 yards on the ground from Baltimore is inexcusable, and the run game's something that has to get better. And last night, I don't think it was tremendously better. A lot of that has to do with the offensive line as well. I get that. However, I will say having Derrick Henry there is a big part of the reason I like him to go far this year because of what you said. You got to account for him, and you don't know in tight down situations, you don't know if he's going to get the ball or if Lamar's going to pull it. And having 2 guys in the backfield like that, it's deadly.
Madcraft on the stream, watching on YouTube, which, by the way, you can watch our live video stream on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube. Just search for the Fan Upstate. Madcraft says Lamar is a hero player, not a team player. It's why Louisville never won anything and why the Ravens struggle in the playoffs. Those of you who play Madden, help me out here. Does Madden have like hero modes, like where you put yourself into certain famous situations, like where a great play happened? I remember way back in the day, and I think they still have it, the NASCAR video games would have like a hero mode where you would be Dale Earnhardt Jr. and you had to come from 15th to 1st in half a lap, that kind of thing. Or you had to make it through the big crash, right? Lamar Jackson has a ton of those hero moments where he would be, where you would be playing as Lamar Jackson in those pressure cooker situations, and you would have to scramble for that 55-yard touchdown as time expired. They would have a ton of those plays, but none of them be in the Super Bowl. And that's what matters.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they have to perform in the postseason in 2024 and in 2025. My last two thoughts on it, and I'll wrap it up. The illegal formation that happened, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 5 times. And I think 2 or 3 times in the first quarter last night. I have no idea if we are going to be drugged through the mud every NFL game this season because the NFL officials are putting more of an emphasis on this illegal formation. But like, I get that their head can't be above their butts. I understand the reason the rule is there to give to I guess take away the unfair advantage of the offensive line having that one step already up on the defensive line. I get why the rule's there, but my gosh, 5 times last night, that was a little ridiculous. I guess at the end of the day, teams are going to have to realize that they're really enforcing this hot and heavy. And then my last thought, the scary thing that I saw last night, Diesel, the scariest element last night and this morning watching the rest of the game. The last thought I have on the Chiefs-Ravens. The Chiefs are coming off of 2 straight Super Bowl wins, and the Chiefs look like they've gotten better.
Yeah.
Like the Chiefs during the offseason look like they've gotten better from last year to this year. And if that doesn't scare the rest of the AFC and the rest of the NFL, I don't know what will. Mahomes is going to be Mahomes, but that defense has just gotten nasty. They've got dudes everywhere. Rashee Rice, they're pushing the court date off until December. Kind of fits the narrative, right? However, they look like a better team than they were 8 months ago. And, man, that is a scary thought for the rest of the league.
Let's see. Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla said Lamar had to play hero ball at Louisville. The team around him was terrible, and he drugged them to wins. Could you imagine if Lamar Jackson played college football in the transfer portal era? How valuable he would have been. Miami would throw $10 million at him.
Yeah.
It would be insane. When we come back, Cole, how concerned are Clemson fans going into this weekend's 8 o'clock kickoff against App State? That's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And then I'm going to tell you how concerned you should be. Clemson fans, right now, text in 71307 on a scale of 1 to 10. How concerned are you? 1, not concerned at all. 10, very concerned. I want to hear what you think. That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. We spent a lot of time talking about how bad Clemson looked week 1 against Georgia. Big difference in the level of opponent coming into Death Valley. Week 2, first home game of the year, night game, 8:00 kickoff. It's been a while, Cole, since I've been at a Clemson game that was a night game, true best of the best atmosphere at Clemson, because they've been playing a lot of early games the last couple of years. I don't understand why, but they've been doing it. And we'll see. We'll see if Clemson can get right in week 2. For a lot of teams, that's what they're calling. That's what they would call a game like this. You have a poor showing in week number 1 against an opponent who's just better than you. And then the following week, you play somebody who's slightly below your level of talent. And you have an opportunity to get right and figure things out. That's what's facing Clemson this week. I wanted to find out, Cole, what are the Clemson fans saying about this game, and how concerned are they going into this week 2 game? And it's partly because of App State and the reputation they have of being a team that wins in big games like this, goes on the road and wins big games. But it's also very much to do with Cade Klubnik and how he's been playing. Not only just last week against Georgia, but the entirety of last season. Yeah. This fan base, I think, is slowly, 1 by 1 by 1, or maybe 10 by 10 or 100 by 100, checking out on Cade Klubnik and his ability to turn this thing around and go be that elite quarterback that we all thought they were going to be. So thankfully, there was an App State message board that linked directly to a couple of TigerNet posts, and I was reading what some of the people on TigerNet had to say. Tiger Drummer, they are no different from Furman. Well, Tiger Drummer, if that's the way you think, you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble. If that's the way the team thinks, you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble. This was funny. SLWCU79 said, "Oh, so we don't mind paying their athletes to come to Clemson." When he saw the paycheck that App State's getting, $1.25 million to come into Death Valley on Saturday. And Josh Pate on his show marked this one as a 4 out of 10 on his concern-o-meter.
4 out of 10?
4 out of 10. So he's got some mild concerns for Clemson. He's not certainly putting him on upset alert, but he's definitely paying attention.
Can I say
to
this real
one.
quick?
Yeah.
I think Clemson fans may not admit as an entirety of the fan base their concern level for Saturday. I'll tell you this, I think it's a lot higher than they'll admit. Well, I really do.
So normally when you ask that question directly, you get people like, who is it? Wesley Roberts, 1 out of 10. Really, Wesley, you can't be a 1 out of 10 concerned when you saw what you saw against Georgia last week. A 1 out of 10
One's low.
Is Ole Miss facing Furman. Ole Miss is a 1 out of 10 concern when Furman comes to town. You can't legitimately say that that's what you think.
If they kept it close against Georgia, I think one would be okay. You know?
But they didn't.
Right.
But they didn't. The facts are the facts. The reality is what the reality is. But people, when they're not putting their name on it, are much more willing to tell you the truth. So I put up a poll at the Fan Upstate on Twitter. Clemson fans, how concerned are you going into Saturday's game versus App State? I gave you 4 options because, well, it's Twitter. You only get 4 options. 1 being not at all, 4 being very concerned. And as of right now, 55 votes in, the most common answer, not by much, but the most common answer is a level 3. That's a legitimate amount of concern.
Yeah.
That's a legit 32%. A third of the Clemson fan base is legitimately concerned about this game.
Don't you have to be?
Yeah.
I mean,
you should be.
What are you basing this off of? Spring practice, summer practice, fall camp?
So part of it is how you looked again in week number 1 against Georgia. But Georgia is a fantastic football team that really had kind of a rusty first half, but especially on the offensive side of the ball, and your defense was able to hold them for the entirety of the first half, and then the floodgates opened for the second half. Sure. So the question really is, how concerned should Clemson fans be? I mean, when you're not asked to put your name on it, 32% say a level 3, 31% say a level 2, and then we've got an even split. About 18% say 1, not at all, and 4 being very concerned. I'm going to tell you right now, you should be concerned. I'm going to tell you right now, because Cade Klubnik has not shown us a damn bit of what we thought we were getting in the offseason, a second year under Garrett Riley, a whole offseason to learn his system and to improve and to start making better decisions. We did not see that in week number 1 against Georgia. So that should be a major cause for concern. And that has nothing to do with how App State comes in. That has nothing to do with any opponent coming into your house. Is how much do you trust Cade Klubnik? And I don't think a lot of Clemson fans do right now.
Well, I don't think they do against quality teams. And when I say quality teams, I mean the Georgias of the world, the guys that are going to be the best of the best, right? I don't think there's any question, and I could be wrong here, I don't think there's any question when it comes to Cade Klubnik versus App State or Cade Klubnik versus Wake Forest. I don't think there's any question marks there. I think he's a good enough quarterback to go win a lot of games in the ACC. However, there's a difference in talking about confidence with a guy going up against your schedule in the Atlantic Coastal Conference rather than going up against the Georgia Bulldogs.
Sure. We got a lot of messages coming in here. JD says, I think Clemson wins, but doesn't cover the spread. 5 points would be his guess. I don't know what the spread is as of this exact moment, but it was at one point about 17 points. We'll take a look here and see how that one has changed.
17 still.
17 still. JB says Tiger fans should be at a 5 out of 10 for a fear factor for this game. I think there should be a legitimate cause for concern. And again, most of it should be the way Cade Klubnik plays. I don't trust Cade Klubnik to go out there and win you a football game when he absolutely has to. He hasn't shown it. He hasn't proven it to us at this point. Clemson by far has superior talent at wide receivers. Clemson's wide receivers are going to be way better than App State's DBs.
Sure.
Phil Maffa is going to be way better and more powerful and stronger than App State's linebackers, who are going to be trying to bring him down. But there's that it factor with Cade Klubnik. And if you got a guy who is not an elite signal caller, you're going to struggle to maybe score 21 to 28 points in this game.
844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663 is the way you can get in touch with the program. Let's go to Gary, who wants to chime in on the conversation. What's up, Gary?
Hey, guys, just real quick. I'll say 2. I'm pretty confident, and I do have confidence in Cade, but I think one of you guys is an App State fan. Is that correct?
I'm an App State alum. I'm trying very hard, Gary, trying very hard to not be an App State homer right now, though. I hope it's coming across. I'm sure it's not. I'm not doing as good a job as I want to be doing, but I hope it's coming across that I'm not trying to be a homer.
No, well, I just remember this from a couple of years ago. So you're good. I just wanted to say my team is NFL, and I know you're talking college, but have you heard of Thunderberg? Playing for Tampa Bay. He's a really great thing, and he came out of App State.
Yeah. Tyreek Thunderberg is his name. Tyreek, yeah.
Yes, sir. I wanted to mention him, but I think Clemson's going to cover the spread. I think they're going to do good. I trust Dabo more than I trust Cabe, and Dabo says that he's the man, and I know a little bit about Cabe, and I think that he's going to work out. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
I like it, Gary. Appreciate the call, man. 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. Daily Dewey. Anything good from the Daily Dewey today? What's up, man?
Yes. Cade Klubnik's going to get sacked 16 times, and they're going to lose by 25 points, and Dabo's getting fired.
Bam. Wow. Dewey's calling it. Thanks, Dewey. 844-FAN-PHONE. I think that the worry or concern with Cade Klubnik is one of those talking points or conversations that you have about guys being able to perform at the highest level. We talked about it in basketball and in other sports as well, but like when you're on the big stage, we've seen guys at the NFL level in basketball. We've seen guys who are very talented. We've seen guys who are 5 stars like Klubnik, a highly touted quarterback coming into Clemson. There's just something about going back to the Mahomes conversation earlier we were having. There's something about Diesel, some guys just not being able to perform on the stage. And I think that Cade Klubnik's in that situation where you'll see him Saturday come out and he'll throw I don't know, 16 of 25 for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns, and everything will be okay. But again, we don't need to judge Cade Klubnik's performance against App State as if this is the end-all, be-all on what this guy is. The reality of it is every game, yeah, you can judge every game one at a time, but you've got to judge Cade based on when he goes against the best of the best, and he has not shown when he goes against good teams, he hasn't shown that he can do it.
So App State, obviously, we all know has a history of pulling the big time upsets and looking really good even in games that they don't win when they're playing against power opponents. In 2023, they had a double overtime loss at North Carolina, 34-40. In 2022, they had that 62-61 loss to North Carolina in Boone, then followed that up by winning on the road at Texas A&M. 2021, 23-25 loss at number 22 Miami. And I only bring those up because there's a couple of guys who are still on those teams, right? I don't really like to go any farther back than that because it doesn't matter. There's those what they did in 2015, 2014, 2012, or 2007 doesn't matter anymore because none of those guys are still around. But I do like to go back a couple of years and show you that these guys are used to playing in big time environments against big time teams and looking really good when they do it.
Sure.
I don't know what it is about Sean Clark. He sometimes struggles to coach and win against Troy and against Georgia Southern, but he looks fantastic against Power 5 opponents. It's one of those things that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I will tell you this, to some numbers that actually do matter. App State had the 26th best offense in the country last year, averaged 33 points a game, 445 yards per game. Again, against a slightly lower level of competition in the Sun Belt, but still, any team that's putting up nearly 450 yards of offense a game is a pretty damn good offense. Yeah. Clemson had the 52nd best offense in the year last year, and they looked bad in their one game against Georgia. And I'm talking about, decision making. I'm not talking about Georgia defensive backs being able to break up a pass. I'm talking about the decision making from Clemson. They did not look good. 5 of App State's biggest offensive weapons off of that team last year return. So I think Joey Aguilar, who was a phenomenal quarterback last year, 33 touchdowns and a 151 passer rating. Joey Aguilar is going to come into Death Valley and look pretty good.
I think he will. Look, the reality of it is Clemson's defense, Diesel, Clemson's defense has a very good chance to shut this entire App State party down early. As good as they are, they have a chance to kind of suffocate all App State's hopes. And I said yesterday, the last thing they want to do is get to the fourth quarter and this thing be close, right? You don't want to let a team like App State hang around. That's just not the recipe for success. I don't think it happens, but there was a text I wanted to get to. And it was about Clemson fans' panic. 419 said, I'm sure many Clemson fans are confident, but still concerned this weekend. But if they poop the bed, it will be panic next week. I don't want to be like Debbie Downer here, but it may be more comical than anything. But can you imagine, Diesel, how Clemson fans would feel if they had to kick a game-winning field goal to beat App State or have a turnover, much like South Carolina had to have against Old Dominion a few days ago? Like, that is not where Clemson wants to find themselves. And I think we were talking about this a few days ago. I wonder how the narrative would be different if Clemson played App State first and then Georgia second. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, would the story of the season be any different?
Well, and that's App State had themselves a tune-up game against East Tennessee State last week. Clemson got tuned up against Georgia. And the question is, how much does that affect each one of these teams? How much does that affect their psyche? Coaches will tell you till they're blue in the face that their job is to refocus this team and put them in a game-by-game, snap-by-snap mentality. Forget about everything that happened before that. So I'm not sure that Clemson players are going to be thinking about the game against Georgia when they go into this one. But it's definitely a cause for concern. I think the spread on this one, 17, is a little high. I do. I think App State covers.
What would happen, though, if Clemson fans, all the disappointment from last week, can you imagine how quiet that stadium
Yeah.
would be Saturday night late. If fourth quarter, that thing's tied.
We may be posting the same kind of post you did at Williams-Brice last week from the press box at Clemson. Now, for Clemson to win this game, they need to play to their potential. For App State to win this game, they need to keep Phil Maffa under control.
Sure.
And they maybe need to force a fumble or an interception, just force Cade Klubnik into bad decisions. And I think App State has a chance to win this game.
Should be a lot of fun. It really should be. All right. Diesel, the clock is ticking. Time is getting low. Time's running out, if you will, on the Upset Picks Challenge. Just a few more hours to submit yours. We'll give you one last look around across the games this weekend and give you one last chance to make your picks. Coming up next, you can get your thoughts in 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We need your name, your game, and the spread if you want to get in on the Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles Markets. It closes, though, Diesel. The doors close slam shut today at 7 o'clock.
That's true.
You
Time's
better
running
get
out.
them in, baby.
Uh-huh.
Let's go down to the text line where as soon as we started the show, we already had Tolos getting their picks in. Gold Rush said give them South Carolina plus 8.5. You know, I don't know if you know this, Tolos, but your boy right here also took the Gamecocks to go beat Kentucky in my Upset Picks Challenge. I'm not very, very confident, like 10 out of 10 confident, but I'm holding out hope, Diesel.
Out of 10, how confident are you in South Carolina's ability to get that win?
5.5. I think it's more of a 50-50 game than people think. I really do. I think South Carolina has a better chance of winning just because of their defense. Their defense is really, really good. So I'm going South Carolina. I'm with you there. Gold Rush, I like the pick. Let's see. Dan B and Just Jess get their picks in. Dan B says he is taking Tulane plus 10 over KSU. Just Jess says she is going with SJSU plus San Jose State plus 6.5 versus the Air Force. So Dan B, Just Jess, they do a fantastic job keeping this thing organized and helping Diesel out. Again, Dan B rolling with Tulane. Just Jess says give her San Jose State. Let's see. Billy Horn chimes in. Billy wants Arkansas plus 10. Tell me if I'm wrong. Isn't that your upset pick as well?
That is. He says plus 10, but I believe that spread was 7.5. Remember, guys, we always screenshot the spreads as of 4 o'clock on Wednesdays when the competition starts, when we open up upset picks so that everyone who chooses the same game gets the same number of points.
So Billy will get the 7.5.
If that, assuming that is what the spread was,
whatever it was, yeah,
as of Wednesday.
So Billy, what Diesel's saying is, if you don't understand it, whatever the spread was Wednesday at 3 when Dan B screenshotted them, that's what the spread you'll get. So even though it might be 10 now, they lock them in on Wednesday at 3 p.m. So I believe it was 7.5, whatever it was, that's what you'll be locked in at. So the best thing to do is try to look at it. I know it's kind of chaotic. The best thing is try to look at it Wednesday at 3 on ESPN.
Because it can affect your decision.
It can. It can. So if you really, I know you want to maybe decide Thursday or Friday, but if you can get them in on Wednesday, you can go ahead and look at the lines at 3 o'clock. And again, from Wednesday to Friday, which is today, they could move a little bit. That's part of it. But they do screenshot them. Diesel and Dan B screenshot those bad boys at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Let me see. Did I miss anything else? Rev Red wants Michigan State plus 9.5 versus Maryland.
I'm putting Michigan State on relegation upset alert.
Ooh.
We're going to be talking about that actually in the very next segment,
okay.
Cole. If there was relegation and it was performance-based, who do we think would be dropped from each major conference at the end of this year?
That's tough.
That's going to be next. So be thinking about that. Who do you think is going to finish last in each conference by the end of the year?
Dab Daddy says, give me South Carolina over Kentucky 8.5. Texter from the 203 chimes in and says, UK Kentucky game could go either way. South Carolina could win big or get blown out. Let's see. Michael in Simpsonville says, because you won't let me change my pick due to a quarterback going down, I'll go just put my heart on the record. Go Cox over Kentucky, says Michael in Simpsonville. Dion says Colorado plus 7 at Nebraska. Is that really your name, Texter? Because I don't know if we have a Dion as of yet, do we?
So Michael in Simpsonville, Cole, we have him on Wednesday as him having picked Virginia at Wake as his upset pick.
Oh, you're locked in.
Yeah, you're locked in. You're locked in. Michael
he's just saying his heart's on the record. Go Cox.
Gotcha.
I believe that's what he's saying. So yeah, we've got you locked in as of Wednesday. Again, Tolos, I know everybody's busy. If you try your best to look at the spread on Wednesday at 3 on ESPN, you'll know what that official spread is locked in at from when it gets screenshotted by the guys, Diesel and Dan B. But you have until 7 p.m. to send in those picks. And Texter says, name is really Dion. I know that seemed intentional, but not a Colorado fan.
When we come back, Cole, if there was relegation and it was performance-based, we're looking into our crystal balls over the course of the 2024 college football season. Who do we think would get dropped from their Power 4 conference by the end of the season? We'll get to that next on the Fan Upstate. Cole, promotion and relegation would never work in America. Not at the pro level, not at the college level, not unless you built a sport from the ground to have a promotion and relegation system. And it can work in soccer because soccer fans are used to it. You do great at the USL 2 level, you move up to USL 1. You do great there, you move up to USL. You do great there, maybe, just maybe, you can move up and play Major League Soccer. Mm-hmm. That would be huge. But Americans, we're not really used to that. We can't wrap our minds around that. And we're way too litigious. You couldn't boot somebody out of a conference where they're making $50 million a year. They'd sue your ass for revenues lost in the future. But let's just pretend for a minute that we as Americans could wrap our minds around this. Let's just say for a second, as people have proposed, that there was a promotion relegation system in major college football. And a lot of people they always look at like Vandy first, right? And say, oh, Vanderbilt sucks. They've always sucked. They should get out of here. Vanderbilt's making $55, $65 million a year just to hang out and keep the GPAs of the conference collectively high. But what would happen, Cole? Who would get booted at the end of this season from every Power 4 conference based on the information that we have right now, which is not an awful lot? First of all, would you want to see a promotion relegation system in college football? You could like pair up the SEC in the Sun Belt. You could pair up the Big Ten in the American Athletic Conference, the ACC in Conference USA, and the Big 12 in the Mountain West.
Would I want to see it? I initially, I think no. I just think there would be so much movement that it would never feel like a consistent league in certain leagues. Not all leagues. It'd be different, obviously, depending on the conference and how it was regulated, I guess. But I don't know. Initial knee-jerk reaction, I would say no. But you can change my mind.
So let's just say, for an example, that the Big Ten is teamed up with the American Athletic Conference. And this year, the AAC, a lot of people are looking at Memphis as that team to beat in the American Athletic, looking at them as possibly the G5 contender for the 12-team playoff. And the worst team in the Big Ten, whoever that may be, most years, Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, something like that. Like, why are you going to allow those programs who are given the same resources as everyone else when it comes to their television revenue? They don't have the same resources as like Ohio State when it comes to fan support and donations and all of that. But why should a Northwestern pick up $65 million every year just to be a mule to get kicked over and over and over again? Wouldn't you rather have a Memphis, who is a really good Group of 5 conference or Group of 5 team, who can show that they have what it takes to be elite and run things at a high level? Wouldn't you want to replace that awful Northwestern with a really good Memphis? And I mean, one of the hardest parts, and I think the reason why this has never been seriously proposed to this point in major college football prior to the transfer portal era, is you had to be able to recruit guys to come to your school.
Yeah.
And if recruits knew that Northwestern was going to be relegated to Conference USA or to the AAC the next year, they would all jump ship, right? They would all want to take off. And that might still happen in the transfer portal era. If you're a junior linebacker at Northwestern and you know by the end of the season that your team is going to be relegated to the American, you're going to jump ship. But at the same time, Cole, if you're that Memphis team, you could all of a sudden get a whole lot of really good talent who wants to come there because they know you're moving up to the Big Ten and they know you're about to get a ton more resources.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. Madcraft says on the YouTube stream, Madcraft says, Cole, what if we changed it and only relegated once every 3 years or so? That could work. Maybe, says Madcraft. Maybe if you did it like, I think of it like high school football. Diesel has reclassifications every 2 years because of attendance size. And I don't like the fact that high school football reclassifies every 2 years. However, I understand why they do, because it's based on attendance. And in South Carolina and a lot of states, the attendance of the schools, the number of kids attending the schools changes so frequently that you have to keep it almost a level playing field. So going back to what I said at the very beginning, I don't love the fact of it. You maybe could convince me if you said every 3 years, but then again, what would it benefit every 3 years? I don't know. I'm not opposed to it, but I would have to be told, here's why it would make the sport better.
So, yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think anyone will ever legitimately propose this. And again, you would never get Tony Petitti to agree to this. You would never get Greg Sankey to agree to this. You would never get the athletic directors, the presidents and chancellors at the lower end of these Power 4 leagues to ever agree to something like this. So let's just unilaterally cold decide. Guess what? We've been promoted. We are now the dual czars of college football. We get to make all the decisions, and this is happening. So looking at the Power 4, conference by conference, who do we think is going to come in last in each of these power conference leagues? It's always common to pick who's going to win the thing, right? Who's going to challenge for the thing? Who's going to win the thing? But for every winner, there has to be a loser. Cole, who is your pick to be relegated out of the ACC at the end of this season based on the information we have right now?
Florida State. I couldn't even say it without laughing. I couldn't even say it with a straight face.
Wow.
No,
could you imagine Doak
not
Campbell
really.
being in the Sun Belt now?
But they're the only 0-2 team in the ACC, right? What other team in the ACC is 0-2? If you have to pick a loser, it's got to be one of the newcomers, right?
Yeah.
Or Virginia. I mean, Virginia won a game last week.
Virginia's just one of those nondescript programs that can never figure. Like, you almost forget Virginia has a football program, right?
I would say probably Virginia.
When was the last time Virginia even played in a big game? I'm talking like a top 25 matchup, prime time. People are paying attention to Virginia football outside of the state of Virginia.
Last time they played Clemson. Really? I mean, seriously, without looking, I'm guessing that's it, right? I would say, you know what? I was going to go with one of the newcomers, but I'll say probably Virginia. They're terrible.
Well, again, with the information we have at hand, and then kind of trying to extrapolate a little bit of what we think might happen over the course of the season, I think Florida State's going to figure something out probably in the season as a bowl eligible team, maybe going 6-6, 7-5 over the course of the season. But I think Stanford ought to be that team that gets the boot out of the ACC. Stanford is not good. They haven't been good for a long time since David Shaw left the program. Is he still there? David Shaw still at Stanford? I don't think he is. But I think Stanford's going to be that team by the end of the plus, I mean, like, who's going to weep for a team out of Palo Alto, California being kicked out of the they can't even get their logo right on CFB 25. So I'm going Stanford.
Okay. I don't hate that.
Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, we see him. He says he's going Virginia out of the ACC. And to tease what else we have coming up, he's got Mississippi State leaving the SEC, Rutgers out of the Big Ten, and Iowa State getting the boot out of the Big 12. The problem with what you said there, Ayatollah, is that Rutgers beat the crap out of whoever they played last week. I mean, they beat the crap out of them. So out of the Big Ten, Cole, I'm going Northwestern. I think Northwestern is going to be that team. I think it'll be a race, given what we've seen from them so far, a race between Northwestern and Michigan State. Sorry, Sparty Party 12, who texted in and got it as upset pick. He wants Michigan State over Maryland plus 9.5. I think Michigan State is going to struggle over the course of the season and very well could find themselves at the bottom end of this conference.
You know what, though? As bad as surely they'll be better than Michigan State. I mean, surely Michigan State will be better than Northwestern, right? You would think. But Michigan State hasn't been good. I don't know. That one's a tough one. I'd say Northwestern, maybe Rutgers, just depending. I know they hadn't entered. They're 1-0 in what was that, a conference game? No. It was not a. I'll still go Rutgers.
Texter says Memphis will never move up because you could lose twice in one day, the game and your car. They need a new stadium. They deserve a new stadium, says the texter. Another texter says, you lost me at soccer. You lost me at soccer. Does a relegation system? That doesn't make any sense. Not a complete sentence there, texter. I don't think college football needs to be more like soccer. Texter says ACC relegation. How about Rutgers and Maryland? Oh, wait. Maryland already got relegated out of the ACC. Texter says Virginia is one of like 4 schools who has never had college game day. To your big game question.
Is that true?
That can't one of 4. I think he means one of 4 ACC schools, not nationally. Texter says they played in the ACC championship game recently. That's more times than North Carolina State has. Another texter says Cal eliminated from the ACC, Indiana from the Big Ten, Vanderbilt from the SEC. But texter, Vanderbilt just beat Virginia Tech. I know you're applying some historical bias, and you may ultimately find yourself proven correct once they get into SEC play. But Vanderbilt actually won a game last week.
To answer the question, ESPN's College Game Day now has visited all but 6 Power 5 campuses.
Ooh.
Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers. You want to try to guess the last 3? You know one of them. We just said
Virginia.
It. Virginia. There's 2 more. You want to guess?
I'm going to say help me out. I don't want to.
Both same conference as Virginia. Newcomer,
Georgia Tech,
Syracuse, and
SMU?
Cal.
Okay, Syracuse and Cal. Interesting.
Never been.
So out of the Big 12, I'm going to say it's going to be Houston. Houston's going to finish last in this conference this year. They got blown out at home by UNLV in week 1. They got a new head coach, Willie Fritz, who's I think going to turn this conference around. Shout out to Tron, who's listening. Who this got to hurt Tron's heart. Tron is a Georgia Southern alum, and he texted in. He's taking App State as his upset pick. That's got to hurt. But Willie Fritz, who was at Georgia Southern, who was a very good football coach at Georgia Southern, now takes over the job at Houston, a program that has had 4 head coaches in 9 years. Cole,
that's a lot.
Yeah, at Major Applewhite. Dana Holgerson, Tom Herman was there a couple years ago, and now they got Willie Fritz. But I think Houston's going to finish dead last in the Big 12. Houston is just in a down bad spot right now.
Oh, God, look at it. Maybe, it's hard to go against you. I was looking at maybe a BYU, but no, they'll be better than Houston, right?
And then finally out of the SEC, Cole, this is going to hurt a lot of people's hearts. We got a couple of Gators in the audience. I think it's going to be Florida. I think Florida finishes with the worst record in the SEC this year. Yeah,
Ooh.
I know. They have an impossible schedule ahead of them.
Their schedule's brutal.
And I think the team is going to quit on them by the end of the season.
Worse than like Mississippi State or Arkansas.
They're going to be firing. I think Arkansas is going to be decent this year, maybe even a bowl eligible team. But Florida's team is going to quit on them. They may be looking for a new head coach halfway through this season. You're talking about a program where half of those dudes, those recruits and those players on that roster, they got pride, man. They don't want to play for a garbage tier football team. They're going to want to transfer out. They're going to want to go somewhere else.
God.
ETN did it to them. Why wouldn't the guys who were on this year's roster do it to them?
That would be rough. I'm telling you, man. Again, the SEC at the bottom, like Vandy's already won 1 game, so maybe you're right there. But that is okay. Let's see. For example,
so I got Stanford, Florida, Northwestern, Houston.
I don't hate that. How many losses will they have though? Florida. I mean, they'll beat Florida State, won't they? I don't know. I mean, who's going to win that game?
That's going to be a race to a field goal.
They won't beat LSU. They won't beat Ole Miss. They won't beat Texas. Won't beat Georgia. Oh God, they won't beat Tennessee.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm saying.
Well, maybe UCF.
I'm trying to go dispassionate here. Okay, I'm not trying to use historical bias. You got to go by the record.
Wins. I'm looking at 1, Samford. A&M's a loss. Mississippi State, I'll give them a win. 2, UCF 3. Maybe Kentucky 4, but that's it. I mean, that is all. Oh, God. Yeah, he's gone.
It'll be tough.
Yeah, 3 or 4. That is tough, man. That is tough. I don't know. I still think Mississippi State's going to be bad. I haven't looked at their schedule yet, but I don't think they're going to be good this year. I do not have a lot of faith in the Bulldogs. All right, Diesel, in the very next segment, we bring on Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media Network. I call him Smitty. You may remember Smitty. Smitty used to brace these airwaves here in the upstate years and years ago and does a fantastic job. I was sitting beside him in the press box Saturday in Columbia, Diesel, and he said, look, need to get you on the show. He covers South Carolina, covers Clemson with Phil Kornblut and Sports Talk Media Network. We'll talk to Smitty on the other side. South Carolina at Kentucky this weekend. Clemson hosting App State. Your thoughts, questions, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. We're going to talk a little South Carolina Gamecocks, a little Clemson Tigers to get you ready for the weekend. South Carolina taking the road trip up to Lexington, Kentucky. Clemson Tigers hosting Diesel's App State Mountaineers. He'll be there. I'll be there in full force. We'll see if App State can keep it close tomorrow night in Death Valley. Want to bring in Matt Smith, good friend of the program, Sports Talk Media Network. Does a lot of great work on Sports Talk with Phil Kornblut. Appreciate Matt Smith taking time to join us. It's hard. It's weird calling you Matt Smith, Smitty. I've always called you Smitty, and I'll always call you Smitty. But of the South Carolina Lexington matchup this week, with them in Lexington, them in Kentucky, and Clemson hosting App State, which matchup do you find more fascinating this weekend?
Oh, well, that's a dead heat because Clemson has to have this one, and I think as importantly, Clemson has to they need to find out, look in the mirror, who they're going to be offensively. They need to know whether Cade Klubnik is the answer. A lot of pundits, I mean a lot, think he is not. He's taken a real beating. They need to decide whether they're running what Dabo Swinney envisions Clemson's offense should look like, or what Garrett Riley brought in from TCU, what he sees in his dreams, the playbook that he brought, that where the Horned Frogs got 51 points against Michigan. He was supposed to bring that playbook, that kind of excitement to Clemson, and it's been quite the opposite. They look a lot the way they did under Brandon Streeter. A lot has not changed. As many as the names have changed, a lot hasn't changed. And so, and obviously South Carolina, Kentucky is fascinating as well because Lenore Sellers' first road start, we have to find out now, was that just a dress rehearsal, that awful hot garbage that we saw offensively from South Carolina, how much they improved from week 1 to week 2, and what are they going to be on offense long term? Is it going to be a Rocket Sanders offense? Is Lenore Sellers going to be a balanced quarterback, or is Lenore Sellers going to be a run-first quarterback like we saw last week in his debut against Old Dominion? So I think they're both interesting. I had no idea Diesel was an App State man, a Mountain man. Now, did Diesel go to App State?
Yes, I did.
Go to a party school?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's why it took me 5 years to get out of there, Matt.
Yeah, I would have stayed for 6 for sure. I love partying at App State, man. And I'll tell you what. Cole was just asking about which game is more interesting. I mean, I think the nation is going to be paying attention to what happens with App State and Clemson. I thought Dabo Swinney said it best when he said that upsets are woven in to the DNA of Appalachian State. That is 100% accurate. I think that is just who they are. App State can do a lot of good things offensively. They're not great on the offensive line. That's the rumor this year. They're going to be at a deficit there against Clemson's, against Peter Woods and Clemson. But here's what App State does do. App State creates a game plan under Sean Clark, creates a game plan to win the game they're in. They beat Texas A&M on the road 2 seasons ago, and they did it in a rock fight. It wasn't their style of fight, but it didn't matter. It's like fighting Rocky. Rocky, you might beat Rocky, like Apollo Creed beat Rocky in the first Rocky. Clubber Lang got him in Rocky 3. Guess what? You're gonna go the distance, or he's gonna come back out, and you're gonna be hurt. Clemson's going to be hurt. Clemson's going to be punched in the mouth Saturday. I'm fascinated to know if they have the character to respond and win this game by multiple scores, or if Appalachian State is going to keep it tight in the fourth quarter and have those Clemson fans sitting on their hands. I'll be there. To me, that's fascinating. Diesel, being an App State fan, kind of a cool thing. You're a giant killer, and every 2 years you get one of these shots, and you brought home a lot of big-time wins. I don't think you get one here, but I think in the fourth quarter, we're all on Twitter talking about this game.
Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media joins us here on the Fan Upstate, covers Clemson. It's kind of tough to gauge the opponent that App State played last week. I mean, East Tennessee State, vastly different talent level than what Clemson is going to be facing them with, but they put up 183 yards rushing on App State last week. So, yeah, the defensive line kind of gave up some big plays there against an inferior opponent. App was a little better against the pass, only gave up 122 through the air. What do you expect the emphasis to be for Clemson offensively against App State? Where do you see them most trying to attack?
I think, and this has actually nothing to do with the Mountaineers defense. I think Dabo Swinney is looking to make sure the psyche of this team is intact. He wants to come out this week and impose the Clemson will and put his imprint on Clemson football again. And they want to do that with Phil Maffa. In my mind, there is no question that Clemson wants to be a running football team. I think the question we all have as observers, are they good enough along the offensive line to bully everybody? That's who they want to be. And by the way, that's who they were when they were at their best. They were actually bullying teams when Wayne Gallman was in the backfield and they had Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Yes, they were making big plays in the passing game, but every defensive coordinator had to commit personnel to the run. I don't know that Dabo Swinney and Garrett Riley are fully on the same page. I say that. I don't think they're arguing. I just think that Garrett Riley, in his mind, he's an air raid guy in his soul. And that's what he believes is the best way to move the football, put points on the board, and win championships. Dabo Swinney, in his soul, thinks the best way to do it is to make sure you can establish the run, and then you attack downfield with the passing game. And I think that kind of battle of wills right there is so fascinating between those two. And again, I don't think it's an argument. I just think they're trying to run Garrett Riley's playbook with Dabo Swinney's personality. And who has to make it all come together? The chef in there has to be Cade Klubnik. I'll leave it to you two to decide if Cade Klubnik is good enough to lead them to the promised land. I think if we took a vote right now, it's an election season, you took a vote among Clemson fans, they'd say Cade Klubnik's not good enough. He doesn't have the goods. But I think we'll find out a lot more about him this week and then on when they get into conference play.
Hey, Smitty, we're going to run a little early. We'll catch back up next Friday with you if that's okay. A little scheduling conflict with you and Steven Garcia, but we're going to catch up with you again next Friday if that's good with you.
Absolutely. Everybody check out this weekend, sportstalksc.com.
Yes.
I'll be covering Clemson App State. Phil Kornbluth's in Lexington right now covering Kentucky and South Carolina. Looking forward. I'll listen to the rest of the show, guys. Talk later.
Thank you so much, Smitty. We appreciate you, man. We'll catch you Saturday. You said he'll be in Clemson.
Yeah, we'll see him face to face.
We'll see him in Clemson on Saturday. Appreciate Smitty's time. Again, Smitty with Sports Talk Media Network. We did have another guest today scheduled for around the same time, and we know he has a busy schedule, so we appreciate him making time for the program today. He is former Gamecock great Steven Garcia joins the program now right here on Wire to Wire. Steven, how you doing, man? Good to catch up with you.
I'm doing good, man. I see the Furman flag back there. I like it.
We do carry Furman here at the Fan Upstate. Furman football, every game can be heard right here on the Fan Upstate. Obviously a tough one, going to Oxford last Saturday for Furman. I don't know really your days of playing, if you're in a situation like Clay Hendricks was last Saturday, having to take a Furman team to go to Oxford. I don't really know how you pep talk your team. Maybe you were a pretty good motivator. What do you say to them?
Let me get a Zen real quick. Appreciate it. I think that's exactly what I would tell them. Let me get a Zen real quick. And maybe a cold beer or something. Yeah, you're kind of going into a buzzsaw. And look, I mean, I'm a South Carolina guy. We got to play Ole Miss in I guess 2 weeks or next week. It's going to be a tough battle. Yeah, they got a machine. Lane Kiffin's got the offense rolling. It's going to be a different situation, man. It's college football is weird these days. It is very weird. But at the end of the day, man, like that's what these kids sign up for.
Yep.
You sign up to play in big time games against heavier opponents, and I know a couple guys that play at Furman, and that you kind of get fired up. I would hope you do to play against these kind of opponents. So, I mean,
Steven, can you recall a game that you were in a situation like that where you were just vastly outmatched? And I don't know how many times it happened to you, probably not very often, but just a game where things weren't going your way and how you as the expected leader of that football team took it upon yourself to keep guys in, focused and in the pocket, even when things were kind of going badly.
I mean, it's hard, especially when you play for a guy like Steve Spurrier that loves to control everything. I try my best to kind of keep everybody kind of gelled and controlled, but when am I allowed to cuss on this thing?
No, no, this is live radio.
We are on live radio as well.
Okay, yeah. When stuff goes bad, it's hard. It's hard, but at the same time, and you got to be able to respond. There's going to be adversity, and no matter who you're playing against, and you just got to be able to respond. That's what you practice for. That's what you're there for. I mean, it's that simple. You just got to be able to pick yourself up and move on to the next play. Short memory.
Absolutely. He is Stephen Garcia joining us right here on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate 97.1 Spartanburg, 97.7 Greenville, anywhere in the world on the Odyssey app. Stephen, South Carolina, I know you still are involved with the program. You still follow them, obviously, former Gamecock yourself. What do you look at when you saw how they did against Old Dominion? Lenora Sellers had a good night on the ground, but in terms of the passing game, how do you as a former quarterback judge what you saw on Saturday night?
It was tough to watch, but it's his first career start. Granted it's against Old Dominion, but I mean those guys play with a massive chip on their shoulder. These guys are also thinking, why am I here? I should be playing in SEC school. I should be at a higher level. It's when you play against those kind of teams, those guys get fired up. But yeah, as far as like watching that game, I think he's got a little bit of first game jitters, and I know he said that. But running the ball 22 times. That's you don't have a very long career doing that.
Stephen, what did you see in practice over the course of the off season? And I don't know how much game film you got to study of Lenora Sellers, but what have you seen from him off the field and out of game situations that you like that maybe just didn't quite translate to that first performance?
Well, what I can say is, and I only saw the first two practices of fall camp, and what I can see and what I saw, whatever, he is the leader of that program. He's the leader of that team, and those guys look up to him. And that's a tough position to be in as a redshirt freshman. I mean, that's when you got grown men that are looking at you to kind of lead the program. It's not an easy task, and with all the amount of NIL the guys are paying, and he's got a lot of stuff on his shoulders. So it's a tough predicament, and I think he's only going to get better.
It's fascinating when you talk about his development, and I agree with you. I think he will get better. Big picture-wise, Stephen, we appreciate you taking time to hop on with us, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but big picture-wise, when you look at Shane Beamer now in his fourth season, you were there in a time period where you had the best of the best in terms of the coach, Steve Spurrier, what he did at South Carolina. Everybody knows how successful he was there. But when you look at Shane Beamer in his fourth season, big picture-wise, do you feel like this is a year where he really has to have wins against teams like Kentucky, who he plays tomorrow night on the road?
1,000%. And I think he knows that. I think the entire staff knows that. It ain't easy. It's just not easy. But I mean, he's beaten teams before. He beat Tennessee when they were, I think, 4th or 5th ranked 2 years ago, and then beat Clemson the year or the next week. And I think that definitely saved him some time. But that being said, I mean, it's a very hot seat at all times. I mean, you got to win games. I mean, I'm sure Dabo's on the hot seat at this point.
Shane, do you? I don't want to pit you against the fan base here, but do you believe that Shane Beamer is safe over the entire course of the season, basically no matter what happens, or do you think that? Yeah,
I do. I think he's done enough, and I think the program's in the right direction. But yeah, I think he's got another year. And listen, I love Shane to death. But that being said, it's you got to win ball games. At the end of the day, you have to win ball games, and it's not easy. But that's why they pay you the big bucks.
Sure. We're talking to Stephen Garcia right here on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate. Stephen, I got to know, I love this video that I saw, this podcast where I saw Gamecock greats and Stephen Garcia, Connor Shaw, Steve Tannehill. I mean, the conversations, obviously you talk about cussing on these airwaves. We're on local radio, so you can't. But I'm sure that that those conversations are mighty juicy. Talk about what you guys have been doing lately.
And you know what? It's actually awesome. Me and Pat DeMarco, my old teammate, older roommate, played 10 years in the league, and he reached out to me about 3 months ago and was like, "Hey, I want to start a podcast. I think you'd be great to do it." Because he's the structure guy, I'm the chaos guy, and it's a perfect blend. But getting all those guys together, Connor, Perry, Steve Tannehill, and Blake Mitchell. It's like I heard stories on that podcast that I had no idea that those guys were doing that. So it was very refreshing. It was very cool, and I the biggest thing that I took away was the competition between me and Connor, between Connor and Dylan. The competition that we had was we hated each other. Connor will never admit that, and we've talked off record, and I was like, dude, I freaking hated you. Like, you wanted my position, I wanted Blake Mitchell's position, but that's what made that quarterback room go. It made the whole thing tick. And don't think for 1 second that the rest of the team didn't feel that energy. So when you have that kind of competition in the QB room, and then you have that kind of competition in the other positional rooms, that's when you have a good football team. Instead of everybody being friends, like, you don't have to always be friends. You just don't.
Steven Garcia joining us here live on the Fan Upstate. As somebody who's lived and breathed South Carolina Gamecock football now for the last decade or more, what is it that's just baked into the DNA of the fan base of South Carolina that keeps them so loyal? I know obviously you were there when times were really good, and times haven't been as good the past couple of seasons. What is it that's baked into that DNA that you can maybe try to put a finger on that keeps them so loyal?
I think bourbon or IPAs.
That's a fair answer.
It's a good answer, but I mean, at the same time, like, there is no professional sports in that area. I mean, these people are the most loyal MFers that you can imagine, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I would get booed in 5 seconds, and then they'd be asking for autographs the next, and that's kind of the way it goes. And I personally loved it. And I wouldn't trade anything for the world for it.
Steven, before we let you go, you mentioned the podcast with you and some Gamecock greats. Any stories that you're even that can be yours that are able to be shared on live radio?
Live radio, probably not.
I was just trying to get one good story out of you before we let you go.
Man. I'm literally trying to think, and it's hard to say something edited. Yeah, the stuff that we talked about and the stuff that we were doing. I mean, that's when college football, there wasn't any Snapchat, there wasn't any social media, there wasn't any NIL. I mean, it was just guys being dudes and just playing ball, and just the ultimate competition. And look, you wanted to play, I want to play. We're gonna figure this out one way or another. And I think that's why we had so much success. And that's one thing that I didn't get along with Coach Spurrier, and that's pretty well documented. But the one thing that he did, and I think Coach Beamer has this exact same kind of deal, is like, he demands perfection, he demands success, he demands something at a certain level. And Spurrier definitely has a different way of saying it, especially to the media, as opposed to Coach Beamer. But I feel like that's kind of what kids need, man. They need a kick in the rear end these days.
Steven Garcia right here with us on the Fan Upstate. My last question for you. We as fans, we can't even fathom what it's like, the pressure of a college athlete at a big time D1 school, especially now when on top of all the other things that you're dealing with, classes, relationships, practices, games, now you're adding potentially hundreds of thousands or even $1 million decisions onto 20, 21-year-old kids. I mean, I have no doubt saying that, Steven, you'd probably be a multimillionaire right now if NIL existed while you were playing at South Carolina. What do you think your reaction would have been? Put yourself back into those 21-year-old shoes. If a big time program comes at you with $1 million offer to say, hey, we know you're there at South Carolina, we know you love it there, but why don't you come here instead?
I get asked this question often, and my response is, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. I would probably be in a ditch somewhere. Like, you can't give me $1 million as an 18-year-old and expect me to abide by the rules. I barely abide by the rules as it is. You give me $1 million or a couple $100,000, I'm not doing a damn thing you say. And that's I say that in jest, but it's like, I hear stories about some kids, some D linemen that are at Florida State, not to throw Florida State on the bus, but some of these D linemen that are, telling the coach to shut the hell up. Like, I'm making more money than you are. Like, that's a bad deal. That is a very, very slippery slope. And I'll tell you what, I heard this thing that Tom Brady said the other day, and he was like, there's no such thing as a program anymore. And I think, as much as I dislike Clemson, I think Dabo Swinney is on this trend of things. He's like, there's no program, there's teams. You go to Clemson, you want to be in that Dabo Swinney program. Now it's with the NIL, it's like, what team can I play for that's going to pay me the most amount of money? And I think that sucks for the game. I do think that college players should be paid, but I don't think the amount of money of these guys, especially kids coming out of high school that haven't played a snap ever, should be getting paid that much money. I don't.
Steven, great stuff, man. We appreciate it. Let's do it again soon if you're up for it. Our listeners on our text line have already talked about how much they've enjoyed hearing you here in the Upstate, and we appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely, man. Listen, last thing I'll say.
Yeah.
Despite my hatred for Clemson, I don't hate Clemson anymore, but I love Greenville. Greenville is one of the coolest cities I've ever been to, and I've been up there. I ran QB camps up there, and every single, whether it's a Carolina fan, Clemson fan, Georgia fan, whatever, they've always been absolutely awesome to me. It's actually really cool.
How about that? That is Steven Garcia. We appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon. You heard it from him. He said Greenville is one of the best cities in the Upstate, and I agree with him. Appreciate him for hopping on with us, Diesel, as boy, was that fantastic. It was not enough, but we got what we could have
spent another hour with him, and I was just thinking, like, please don't cuss. Yeah. Please don't cuss. Please don't cuss. I'm like, I don't know how long Cole's headphone cable is, if he can get all the way back there without strangling himself. When we come back, Cole, let's take a look around the sports world at our Daily Wire, see what else is happening out there. That's next on the Fan Upstate. So much happening out there in the sports world, Cole. It's tough to keep up with all of it. So that's what we're here to do right here in this segment. It's called Our Daily Wires. This is the buzz.
Might have that's twice now.
I'll wait for you to do it.
I
again.
haven't turned.
Hang on. Let's all slow down. Let's wait for
Cut
Cole.
the music. Cut it.
There we go. These are our daily wires. This is the buzz around the sports world. Jalen Ramsey and the Miami Dolphins have reached a 3-year, $75 million deal worth $24.1 million per year, making him the highest paid corner in the NFL. It is getting paid season right here. You know, we're right there in that crunch time, right before game one for all these teams. They got to get those deals done immediately. Lamar Jackson believes that the NFL should have overturned the would-be game-tying touchdown caught by Isaiah Likely as time expired. He said, I'll stand on it. I thought it was a catch. I think they should reverse it. Patrick Mahomes praised Xavier Worthy's rookie debut. He scored 2 touchdowns in the game last night, saying, quote, just having him out there, it just opens up stuff. You saw when he's out there, they're playing shell coverage. It's like getting guys like Travis Kelce, and it's getting guys like Rashee Rice open underneath. And that's what's so great about this offense is we're able to do all of that, and that's when we're at our best. Exact same conversation we had with the Carolina Panthers. You start adding pieces like Xavier Legette. You take the pressure off guys like Adam Thielen. You take the pressure off those running backs as well.
You know what? I agree, and I think that's going to be one of the more fascinating parts of this team. I'm ready. Like, I'm not a Panthers fan. I've made no bones about it. However, I'm ready to see if they can prove us wrong. And I
just remember the buzz in the upstate when the Carolina Panthers were good.
And look, maybe Dave, like, I'm putting a lot of faith and hope that Dave Canales can get them back there. I really am. And, you know, to be honest with you, a lot of people didn't like the Panthers because of Cam Newton. You either loved them or hated them, right? And I think that people would trade anything in the world now to have him back.
To that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I loved Cam Newton before the refusal to jump on the football in the end zone, and that started the beginning of the end for Cam Newton and his reign of goodwill here in the upstate. Last note on the Chiefs game last night, Patrick Mahomes surpassed Len Dawson to become the Chiefs quarterback with the most all-time passing yards.
That didn't take long.
No, obviously the game has changed tremendously since Len Dawson played. The Atlanta Braves fell last night to the Rockies 3-1. They tallied just 5 hits in the game, and they are now tied with the wild card with the Mets.
The Mets are on a heater, man.
Yeah.
They're on a heater. They're playing good baseball. I think it would be, you know, the Braves have shown some life. I think it would be one of those situations, though, where if they don't make it, Braves fans are probably like, let's just go ahead and get it over with. Don't make it. There's no point in making it and getting beat. Let's just not make it and get this crap season over with.
By the way, the Atlanta Braves will face the Toronto Blue Jays tonight at 7:20. Max Fried will take the bump and face Kevin Gossman. USC has announced that they are retiring Caleb Williams, number 13, and bringing back Reggie Bush's number 5.
Yeah,
so they're unretiring number 5. The bar set pretty low at Southern Cal. 18-8 for Caleb Williams, 2 seasons, 7-5
bar set low
in 2023. That's worthy of retiring someone's number. All the greats that have come through Southern Cal, and you retire number 13 for a 7-5 year? The hell is wrong with you, Southern Cal?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 900th goal of his career. That's a big number, I guess, in soccer. Good for you, Cristiano Ronaldo. And finally, this one's a dark one, man. This one's a weird story. Ugandan marathon runner Rachel Cheptegei has now passed away after fighting for 3 days for her life after her ex-boyfriend doused her with gasoline and set her on fire.
Dude, what?
Yeah. The attack was allegedly carried out over a dispute over a piece of land in a different country, in Kenya. Rachel bought the land so that she could build a house on it and be closer to an elite athletic training facility. I mean, this is just ugly.
That is
an ugly
weird.
Story.
That's strange.
This stuff just happens in Florida, not in Uganda.
Oh, man. On movies. That's where
Right.
it happens, not in real life.
Brutal, just brutal.
All right, high school football fans, it's time to talk a little high school football. Week 2 is here. The Burns Rebels are off tonight. It feels weird being in the studio today, but here I am. No Burns Rebels football on the Fan Upstate tonight. Regular programming. Get your high school football questions in right now. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. 2 more hours, Diesel, for the Tolos to get those upset picks in. You have until 7 o'clock. Really, not even that. What, like 6:52? Is that right? 6:52, 30?
You're running out of time. We've had a couple more get their picks in.
We'll run through them. We got time. Let's look at the text line. We'll get a little high school football in.
Kevin Buggs.
Yeah,
wants
Kevin.
Tulsa over Arkansas State +8. Hookset says he'll take Boise State over Oregon +19. Sorry, Hookset. I think you're reaching it. You asked this question yesterday, Cole. Are we getting to the point where you need to start reaching on some of these bigger scores? Hookset's reaching on that one.
There goes the van. There goes the van. The van.
You mean the one that I wrecked last weekend? I don't want to talk about that.
I know, but I just saw it. That's the first time I've seen it.
It's pretty bad, right?
I'm like squirrel over here. So from the side, I can't see anything.
Really?
No, from the
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that looked bad.
I was driving down the road. I've been driving around the last couple of days going to get quotes, try to get this thing fixed. And like nobody has pointed and been like, oh my God, look what happened to that
I don't think it's as bad as you think. I don't think it is.
I've seen one of the estimates. It's pretty bad.
Estimates.
Waiting on second one to come back. But the first one has not looked good.
Oh,
the dollar
boy, that's
figure,
funny.
not good.
If you're just tuning in thinking, what are they talking about? We got to it earlier. You have to use the rewind feature on the Odyssey app. It was Diesel versus the van.
Yeah.
In Atlanta.
Short story. I was supposed to be covering Clemson, Georgia last week.
Oh, you covered it all right.
And I never actually made it into the game. I never made it out of the parking garage because, well, I got stuck in the parking garage with a very tall radio station vehicle under a much shorter parking garage roof.
Yeah, if I were you, I would have blamed
stuck.
The roof.
I was stuck. Yeah, the roof just like fell down. It dropped. I don't know how it happened.
Gosh,
I don't know how it
that's
happened.
so funny.
Trey from Kentucky wants Tulane versus Kansas State for 10. Tron taking App State +17 over Clemson. Sparty Party 12 wants Michigan State over Maryland for 9.5. In no world, Cole, should Maryland be 9.5-point favorites against Michigan State. Like that.
No, I agree with you.
Michigan State's a program with so much history and so much pride, and you got one of the coolest mascots in college football. But like that, what the hell's going on up there?
No, I'm with you. It's bad. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about, I think it was 2 or 3 segments ago, it's gotten bad. And that's why I'm not picking them to finish last in the conference. But
yeah,
they're certainly going to be in the bottom half. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah,
So,
Mel Tucker really, really left that program in a rough place.
yeah, he did. 344 said, "Congratulations, Diesel. You have the most expensive credential trip in the Fan Upstate history." As of right now, he does.
I ended up on an email chain with multiple people from corporate, and they said, "Well, you know what? We've actually seen worse than that."
That made you feel good.
Yeah, it made me feel so much better. When somebody from corporate says, that's pretty bad.
So
but we've seen worse.
Remind me when we have time later in the 5 o'clock hour, 6 o'clock hour, I'll tell my worst F-up story with a recent let's see. This one's, I mean, look, you think yours is bad, but I'm telling you, this is a tease. I got you beat. Money-wise.
Really?
Money-wise.
Okay.
So I'll give you that story in a little while from now with an employer this was probably 4 years ago.
Texter says, I don't know if I should be worried. No one is taking my same pick. Well, not JD. I know whose phone number this is not now. Not JD. What was your pick? I don't remember. And you don't sign your text, so we don't know your name.
Yeah, sign your text. Tolo, insert your name. All right, high school football week 2 tonight. Diesel, the Burns Rebels are off. They will go to Greer next week. We have the list of games tonight. I believe, let's see, today is the 6th. I believe I shared that with you. If you can't see it, let me know. But 9-6, week 2, it's the 3rd set of games, but it's week 2. I know, doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. So I've made my picks, and they will be up on the Fan Upstate website before the show comes to a conclusion.
Can you use your tremendous influence and power, Cole, and petition the South Carolina high school leagues to can this stupid week 0 crap?
I don't think the high school league listens to anybody. I think they're in a situation where
must be the same people that decided to ban the war chant on 3rd down at Doak Campbell Stadium.
Yeah, they're trying to get through to the high school leagues, kind of like trying to teach a toddler to do mathematic formulas, maybe formulate pi, whatever you math geeks geek out about. That's about what it is. So week 2, the biggest games tonight. Do you want to go with Diesel, the biggest games tonight first, or do you want me to tell you the teams that have the most pressure on them to win first?
Biggest games
tonight. I like it. So Gaffney, Greenville tonight. Gaffney, J.L. Man last week was really good. A 2-point win for the Gaffney Indians. We talked to Scoot Watson last week, and, we talked about how big that game was. I don't think Gaffney, Greenville will be as big. I think Gaffney's a much more superior opponent than Greenville is. Greenville has a really good quarterback, first-year coach in Jabo Shaw, the brother of Connor Shaw, who Stephen Garcia referenced several times earlier in the program. So I like Gaffney tonight. I think it could be a good game for a little while, but I do think they pull away. I will say this, Diesel. Dorman Greenwood tonight, I think, is a fascinating game. Greenwood is a team with Chris Liner as their head coach, going against a Dorman team that got their butts whooped last Friday night. The score, Diesel, last Friday for Dorman was 53-0. They went down to Grayson, Georgia, and took a shellacking, 53-0. So they are playing at Greenwood tonight. A big bounce-back game, hopefully, for the Cavaliers. And I know we had a question or two on the text line earlier about Dorman Greenwood. It should be a really good game. I'll tell you this. I've had a lot of trouble picking Dorman Greenwood tonight. When you look at Dorman, they had a good performance in week 0 against Greenville. Then week 1 last week, they go and get shellacked by Grayson, who's a D1 team. So I don't know. You know how in college football we talk about not overreacting? I think the same applies here. I don't know how good this Dorman team is yet. You just, Diesel, you can't judge high school within the first 2 weeks of the season. So Dorman Greenwood tonight, I believe, will be a better litmus test in terms of where both of these teams are.
So, I'm looking down the spreadsheet here of high school teams that have started over, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but there's some proud programs that are currently sitting at winless. Again, I get it. There's only been 2 weeks of the season. Still a lot of football to play here, but I'm looking at Easley, Wade Hampton, Greenville High School, which has been really good for a couple of years in a row and starting off kind of rough. Christ Church, which was always a really good football program in their division, who have started the season on a rough start. Do you see any of those schools, any of those coaches potentially on the hot seat, or do you think it's just way too early to call any of these?
Well, I think it's way too early. And then obviously Burns not playing tonight, Diesel, but they're 0-2 as well. Burns in that same conversation. Looking at teams that have not had a good start, Christ Church is a very interesting team that you brought up because we know that the last few years, Christ Church has been so dominant, winning state championships, and Quinn Hatfield does an outstanding job at Christ Church. They did get reclassified, Diesel. They moved up. They are now in 3A Region 2. So they're playing against a little bit better competition now. So they're 0-2. Tonight, you talk about big games. This will kind of answer both of your questions. They play Riverside tonight. Riverside's 2-0. Riverside is a really underrated football team this year, in my opinion, led by Matthew Rochester, a young quarterback, some really good experience at wide receiver and defensive backs. I think this is one of the bigger games of the night, Christ Church at Riverside. You talk about those guys and Quinn Hatfield being 0-2. The reality of it is I'm picking Riverside tonight, and I think they'll be 0-3. They still have a lot of talent, really good quarterback, Jackson Rep, a South Carolina Gamecock commits, a really good player for Christ Church. But, when you move up in classification, you play some tough non-region opponents. I think, it's a start that Christ Church isn't used to. Starting 0-3 potentially. I know the game hadn't been played, but I do like Riverside tonight at home. I think Riverside gets the win. It should be a really good game. And then looking at other 0-2 teams, Greenville, first-year head coach in Jabo Shaw. Greenville had Greg Porter for a while, and Greg Porter did a really good job at Greenville and took them to, being a very consistent football team. And they're taking a little bit of a back seat now. They're taking, it's a rebuilding year, the way I look at it with Jay Beauchal, but there are some 0-2 teams that are, I'll say, under pressure. And Christchurch, I believe, is one of those. Another one I'll give you is Powdersville. We talked to Robert Muster last Saturday on the Saturday Scramble. Powdersville is also 0-2. They go to Wren tonight. Wren's 1-1. Anthony Freight, who used to be at Hillcrest, is now at Wren. It's a big night for Powdersville to see if they can snap that 0-2 streak that they have, because this was a team that just a few years ago was playing deep into the playoffs. So it's going to be a big test for Wren as well as what did I say? I just completely lost track there. I'm sorry, Powdersville, Wren and Powdersville.
So of those 0-2 teams, which one, at least on paper, because obviously we don't know since they haven't picked up wins yet, which on paper do you believe is the best 0-2 team that has the best chance to really turn this thing around and end up having a pretty good season?
I think Burns can turn their season around. I really do. Last week, Burns was at Irmo. And, Zy Landrum, who started at quarterback for Burns in week 0 at TL Hanna, he was injured last week. Junior quarterback Kane Rogers got the start, and they looked a lot better. And that Irmo team we saw Friday night was a really good Irmo team. I mean, a really good team. And Burns was down. It looked for a minute like Irmo was going to run them out of their own stadium, but no, Burns came back and put together a really solid fourth quarter. I think Burns is an 0-2 team, Diesel, that's going to turn things around. Their schedule sets up nicely for them. They have Greer and then Wade Hampton, I believe, after that. So you could see the Rebels win 2 or 3 in a row. I will say this. Burns is in an interesting position because obviously we've talked about it several times. They're playing all their games on the road. They're in an interesting position because they have had some serious injuries affect them very early in the season. Running back Trace Aguirre, who we all know is one of the better running backs in the area, he's out, and he's going to be out for quite some time. So, they're a young team that lost a lot, and then when you add on the injuries and the adversity that they've already had to face, that makes it tough. It really does. Let's go to the text line. Shout out Coach Freight, says a texter. My wife's cousin is his wife. Texter from the 430 says Woodruff or Emerald tonight. Texter, it's a good question. Woodruff, Emerald, that game's at Woodruff. They're 2-0. Emerald's also 2-0. But I'll tell you this, texter. I like the text about Woodruff, Emerald, because Woodruff is a team, and I know that, we haven't gotten into this conversation yet with Woodruff, but Brett Sloan in his second season, they're a team that has really surprised me thus far. The way they came out in week 0, man, that was impressive for them to put up as many points as they did. And then last week, continue to put up points offensively. Brett Sloan's got Woodruff going in the right direction. And I'll be honest with you, I like Woodruff tonight over Emerald. I really do. That should be a good game. And I know Emerald's very much improved from where they normally are, but it looks as if Woodruff has a serious offense right now. And maybe I underestimated what Brett Sloan could do that quickly at Woodruff, but it was a bumpy first year getting back into coaching. In the upstate, it's always tough coaching in the upstate, but I've been very impressed with him so far.
So Cole, I love the player profiles that we do, the high school player of the week profiles that we do. Who's kind of on your short list, your watch list for this week of who might be a prime candidate?
I like doing this. I like giving a little player of the week preview, trying to guess. We've had some good ones so far. We had Lincoln Husky of Bowling Springs the first week. Mm-hmm. We had Andrew Roop of Gaffney last week. I didn't expect Andrew Roop to go off like he did. That is a good question. I'll tell you, the way I start with that, the way I answer that is I look at teams. I look at games first. I'll tell you a team that I could see producing a player of the week would be Mountain View Prep, a team that started off very first season. They've had an excellent start. They're 2-0. They've put up a ton of points. They had some player of the week candidates last week. Their quarterback was a player of the week candidate. They have St. Joe's tonight. St. Joe's is 1-1, coming off a loss to Chapman. I like Mountain View Prep, Diesel, to produce a potential player of the week. I think that's where you'll start. Woodruff, though, we were just talking about Woodruff. Woodruff has a good chance as well. Spartanburg going against Broome tonight. Maybe Spartanburg produces a player of the week. I'll give you one more. Let me find one more here. I'm going to go. I'm going to go J.O. Man. Maybe J.O. Man could produce a player of the week. They have Daniel tonight. That should be. We hadn't spoke on this one yet, and I'll get to a few texts in a minute. But that would be one of the major upsets. Daniel over J.O. Man. And you may say, well, Daniel's, how would that be an upset? Well, I'll tell you this, the way that J.O. Man has acquired talent lately and players have transferred into J.O. Man, they're loaded. I think J.O. Man wins tonight, but that should be a really good game. All right, a few texts before we run, because I know we have the weekend menu coming up next, Diesel. So let me get to the text line. Jarrett Tripp says, opinions on MVP versus St. Joe's tonight, and how do you think MVP will shape out the rest of the season in their inaugural season? Jarrett, good question. I'll tell you this. I think they're the favorites in the region. I really do. I think they're the favorites year one in their region, and they have been able to put up a ton of points. They're a really good team, and, I think they'll beat St. Joe's tonight. I like them over St. Joe's. Again, I'll have my picks up on the website before the show's over, but they're going to be tough. Texter says, Clinton has played 3 straight rivals to open the season, Woodruff, Lawrence, and now Newberry. Yeah, they have. Clinton's down, and they have a brutal non-region schedule. So I do think Clinton wins tonight over Newberry, but that should be a really tough one. Another good game, Clinton-Newberry. Topic for another day, says a texter, how do these high schools manage to get players transferring in? They can't recruit, so what do we call it? Well, you and I have talked about that.
Relocation,
right? You relocate. You're supposed to have a physical address. A lot of them do. A lot of them don't. But that's it's a hot topic.
It's a sticky situation.
Corn
in high
Chip,
school leagues.
it is. It really is. Corn Chip also says those Georgia teams are no joke. I grew up like 10 minutes from Grayson. Yeah, Grayson, who beat Dorman really, really bad last week. Grayson's on another level. And again, I think Dorman-Greenwood tonight's a big game. I originally, to start the week, thought Greenwood would win the game tonight, but I am going Dorman to get the win. So I'll give you a few quick picks. I'm not going to pick every game right here on the air, but I do like Gaffney over Greenville tonight. I do like Dorman over Greenwood. I like Hillcrest over Greer. Hey, they're off to a 2-0 start. We just talked to Bennett Swaggart yesterday, Diesel, on the show. I like J.L. Man over Daniel tonight. I like West Side over Hannah. I like Pendleton over Woodmont. Boiling Springs over Chapman. That one will be a game that I'll be at tonight covering. You can follow along at the Cole Bryson at the Fan Upstate. Give me Riverside over Christchurch, Spartanburg over Broome tonight, Woodruff over Emerald, Powdersville over Wren. Let's see, one or two more. I'll go Mountain View over St. Joe's, and it's been a tough one for Union County, but I'll go York over Union County. And lastly, Blacksburg over Cherryville.
You're going to be at a high school game covering it this week, even though normally on the play-by-play call of Burns,
yes,
they're off this week. You're going to a high school game. Why'd you choose to go where you chose to go?
It's a great question. I chose Chapman Boiling Springs tonight because it's a rivalry that was renewed a few years ago. Chapman's down, but they still have athletes. Boiling Springs is very good, and they're Boiling Springs, in my opinion, is a team, Diesel, that has a chance to make a deep run. I'll tell you this, I'll only see Boiling Springs one other time this year, and it's when Burns plays them. I wanted to see Chapman, and I also want to see Boiling Springs up close in person. Lincoln Husky, those guys, I think they're going to have a special season.
And even though you got tonight off from doing Burns play-by-play, that doesn't mean you got tomorrow morning off. You're going to be back out on the road tomorrow morning at an Ingalls doing the Saturday Scramble. What location will you be at?
Pine Street in Spartanburg. So we are going to the Berg tomorrow. Hope you can come out. Again, it's on the east side of Spartanburg, Pine Street location. Myself, Alex Guest, will be there 8 to 10 a.m.
Love it. When we come back, Cole, let's take a look at the menu, so to speak, at least, of college football tomorrow. If you could only watch one game per time slot, and I know you people who are using YouTube TV, you're watching like 30 games at a time, but if you could only watch one at a time, what should your number one pick for each time slot be? Maybe my menu looks different from Cole's menu. We'll get to that next on the Fan Upstate. I just want to let you guys know that it took every fiber of our being to come back on the air with you right now because we found John Wick on TV. No, we tuned in to watch the
one line
Packers Eagles pregame.
Oh,
but we're still 90 minutes away from that.
He literally just said the line I wanted to hear.
They're pre-gaming for Packers Eagles with John Wick #1, which is not even close. Like the other 2, 3, and 4 can't even hold a candle.
Yeah,
candle to John Wick #1.
A blinking pencil.
One of it's probably the best action movie of the past. When did this come out? Like 2010, 15 years or so?
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
It's because it was realistic. That's what made it so good. It actually, like they got to 2, 3, and 4, and they're like, let's have bulletproof designer suits and let's have this whole network of spies. Like it was just
2014.
It just got to the point. It's only been 10 years.
10 years.
We've had 4 of these movies in 10 years. Is this all Keanu Reeves does? Is make John Wick movies?
I haven't seen. Okay, I think I saw 4, but I don't think I've seen 5.
I don't think there is a 5.
Oh
no, there is no number 5.
Time out.
Are they working on it?
Writing for John Wick 5 has already begun, and it is expected to be released in theaters in 2026.
Given what happens, I'm not gonna spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched, but given what happens at the end of #4, how do you have a #5?
See, I don't think I've seen 4 now.
What is this, Fast and the Furious, where you can just do 30 of them like nothing matters?
Wait a minute. Have I seen 4 now? That's gonna bug me. You say that
4 had the long stairway scene.
Yeah. I have seen that.
Yeah. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. I know we'd rather just do play-by-play of John Wick Chapter 1 because it was just absolutely fantastic. Good. But we actually do have to talk some sports here on the Fan Upstate. And by the way, you still got about an hour and a half to get in your upset picks for week #2. Those of you who are just joining the show, who are just, again, waking up out of your hibernation of college football's offseason, we're doing an upset picks challenge brought to you by Ingles. We love Ingles. They do such a fantastic job at what it is they do, and they help us do what it is we do by sponsoring the segment. So go to ESPN.com, find a college football game that you think the underdog has a legitimate chance to win the game outright.
South Carolina.
Well, I mean, that's your pick. That's certainly your pick. And if you think you can find one that you think is going to be a legitimate upset, then text it to us at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Give us your name, your game, and what the spread is. It's a long competition. It's a long challenge. We still got 10 more weeks of this challenge to go just in the regular season. And then you add bowl games, and you add the playoff. And then we crown a winner of the challenge. So you can still get into this thing. Amazon guy absolutely crushing everybody right now. He's already racked up 24 points. That's because he hit on 2 big uns.
He's done
to start the season.
I'm predicting no more wins.
Yeah. No more wins.
You can't go.
It's
you
tough.
Can't go 2-0 and keep winning, man.
Yeah.
You better shut that thing down before
Mike Main says Equalizer is greater than John Wick. Them's fighting words. Words, Mike Main.
Is it though?
You woke up and chose violence today, as they say.
How about that? Denzel Washington's so good.
He's great.
I don't think it's better though, is it? I don't think I like the.
Equalizer is not even as good as Training Day.
And it came out the same year too.
Training Day is way better. Training Day is one of my all-time favorite movies.
So you're going no.
So I'm going no.
Okay, me too.
I'm going no on that. Not to say the Equalizer isn't a good movie. I'm just saying it's not better than John Wick. So yeah, get us your upset picks. You got still about an hour and a half to get those to us. Very popular pick has been South Carolina over Kentucky, getting 10 points. A lot of people, not as many, rolling with me. I'm high on Arkansas. They're facing Oklahoma State, who looked iffy in their first game out. So I think Arkansas can get it done. The name of the game is picking upsets. If it was easy, anybody could do it, right?
Yeah.
We've had Gold Rush, Dan B, Just Jess, Billy Horn, Rev Red, Dab Daddy, Dion, Will G, Sparty Party 12, a bunch of other people getting in their upset picks today. Again, you still have 90 minutes to make that happen. But Cole, some people, believe it or not, are still rocking television the old-fashioned way.
Antenna?
And, well, no, not that old-fashioned. Actually, I do have an antenna in my house. Yeah, I have it plugged into the TV. So, like, when the internet goes down, because we stream everything, when the internet goes down, I do still have the ability to pull in some entertainment and get some information. It's funny because, like, I don't know that I have a functioning radio in my house. We work in radio, and everything is based on the internet, right?
Have you? I've never owned the radio.
What?
No. Too young.
What?
Well, not since I've been like post-college. Yeah.
No.
I'm in my car. Does that count?
Like you should at least have. Well, I mean, I guess if you want to go out in the middle of a storm to get the info, go right ahead. But some people still have to kick it the old school way, Cole, and only watch one football game at a time. I know you people who have YouTube TV, you're living in the future, watching 4 games at a single time, and I am jealous. But I'm also not willing to pay all that extra money to get it.
You know what I did? I added another TV, so now I can have 8.
No. Side by side?
Yeah.
Good God, dude.
Yeah. I've got 8 games. 8 games. It's great.
I've never,
the same login.
I've never wanted to be someone else more than I do
It's
right
worth
now.
it. It's worth it. It really is worth it. YouTube
Now,
TV.
Kelly Ford, the guest that we bring on every Wednesday, he's absolutely fantastic. He has this ridiculous setup in his house, Cole, where he has 5 TVs.
Oh.
He has a huge, like 85-inch TV in the middle, and then he's got 2 35-inch TVs, let's just say, flanking it on either side. Ooh. So that dude, 4, 8, 12, 16, that dude could be watching 20 football games at any time.
That's true.
Like, I'm a roast. Baste me. Hit me with as many games as you possibly can. But those of us still kicking it old school, we have to look across the college football landscape, and we have to formulate a plan. What are we going to watch? You can only pick one game at a given time.
Yeah,
during a given time slot. What game do you predict is going to be the best game in each time slot? So we got some games starting tonight, Cole. Not a lot on the menu. But we got Western Illinois, Indiana, BYU, SMU, and Duke Northwestern. Now, if you go just by the spread, logic would tell you that Duke Northwestern is going to be the best football game. Tonight.
Yeah.
Over under on that game, though, 37.5. So they're not expecting a high-scoring game there.
What's up with that? I haven't even noticed that till you just said that.
Mike Elko is gone. I don't even know who's coaching Northwestern. But
wow, that's
opposite that, you're going to have BYU, SMU, 12.5 point spread in that game, but they're calling for the over-under there to be 55.5. If you can only pick one of those games, why? Which one are you picking and why?
That's tough. I think that the curiosity of SMU and them being in the ACC, and again, I have no flavor or no desire to watch BYU football. However, I think I would choose BYU SMU.
Yeah. I like that one.
I do too.
I like that one. SMU is supposed to be that team that is going to take a step this year. They're not getting any financial resources out of the ACC. Remember, that was part of the deal. That was part of the reason why the ACC took them, is because they could say, hey, guess what, guys? Don't pay us at all this year. And I don't know, is it just 1 year? It might be longer than that. They are not taking any money from the ACC.
How bad do they got to feel? I mean, come, hey, guys, y'all can come play with us, but you don't even have to break.
I mean, we've been admonishing the ACC for not raising the per team payouts over the past couple of years to keep Florida State and Clemson happy. What are they going to do to increase the money so that when SMU does finally start taking a paycheck, that these teams aren't losing money? They don't have to drop it to give some of that money to SMU.
It's true.
So, yeah, I'm going with BYU SMU
I like that
as well.
I like it.
SMU's a high-flying offense, right? They didn't look good in week number 1 against Nevada. But they did score 29 points in a win there. But they scored 59 points in week 2 against Houston Christian.
Who?
Yeah.
Who?
Houston.
Who?
The Houston Christians. So you got to go with that one. So that's a fairly easy one to pick. Like, even when Duke's good, it's not a sexy game to watch. Duke Northwestern, like a lot high collective GPA all over the field. No disrespect to the football players there. They are all going to be our bosses one day, but I don't want to tune in and watch them hit each other. You know,
I hate to tell you, but just looking ahead, it's gonna continue to be easy picks, I believe. I don't know.
Think so?
I don't know. That 12 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the tough ones. And tomorrow. So noon slot tomorrow. Most people are going to go with this one. I'm going to wait on a second before I give it to you. Could be Arkansas, Oklahoma State. Could I interest you if we were going a la carte here? Could I interest you in Arkansas, Oklahoma State? Are you going to tune in to watch? Are you beating down the doors to watch Arkansas, Oklahoma State?
No, sir.
How about Georgia Tech, Syracuse? Georgia Tech looked pretty good so far this year.
I'd watch that one. I have it on one of the four. Yeah,
you would watch it, but you can't watch it. You got to choose. Okay. You got to choose here. How about Troy, Memphis? Troy normally pretty good. Memphis.
If I have
G5 contender
on it, I guess I would. Right?
If you had cheese on it, Tennessee Tech, Georgia.
Nothing.
They're gonna. Georgia can basically name their score in that one, and if I'm them, I'm putting up 80 points. I'm not stopping scoring until we put up 80 points on the board. Like, what are you gonna do? Take a knee against Tennessee Tech?
That was
no disrespect to Madcraft.
No,
but you know what I mean. Like, maybe learn how to take a knee.
Is he a Tennessee Tech guy?
No, he's a Miami fan, and they didn't take the knee.
Oh, gotcha. I was about to say, like, what?
Is there any other game that interests you as much as Texas, Michigan?
No, and I'll tell you what I don't understand. I don't know why. Maybe I'm missing the boat here, Diesel. 7 points? What am I missing?
What is Vegas seeing here?
What are we doing? We could spend an hour on 7 points.
Michigan State 30-10 over Fresno State. If Michigan beat a Power 5 team 30-10, if Michigan hosted, North Carolina, beat them 30-10, I'd say, oh, well, that's pretty good. You Power 5 team, Mac Brown, 30-10. That's what Michigan should be beating a team like North Carolina by. But they did it to Fresno State.
I have no idea. So on the
are they just not that high on Texas?
Well, I'm going to look at something on the application that I use to do cheesy stuff. I'll put it that way. I have the ability to buy points. I'm going to see what the lowest. Okay, I can get this game tomorrow at Texas -5. God, give me a better lock this weekend than Texas. Oh, I have no idea. To answer your question, what Vegas sees in this, Michigan's good, but they don't have Harbaugh. They don't have McCarthy. Texas is going to beat these guys by 14 points, right?
Yeah, Texas absolutely murdered Colorado State 52-0 last week. Texas is what we all think they're going to be, right? Quinn Ewers, absolutely phenomenal. Steve Sarkisian, great offense. I can't fathom either. Unless they're saying the Michigan defense is just that elite that they're going to hold Quinn Ewers down.
I just took it.
No way.
I literally just took Texas -5.
Really?
That is. I'm so
How much you have
lost.
to spend to get it down to -5?
Oh, you got to spend a little bit. Huh? So you're risking more than you're going to win, but
the over/under 42.5.
Ooh,
expecting a decent offensive game. That's what it's got to be. They got to be expecting that Michigan defense to hold Texas down.
They got to be.
I don't see it.
That is the one game that I just don't understand.
All right, now we're moving up to 3:00. Remember, the exercise is you can only pick one game to watch in each time slot. What are you gonna choose? Could I interest you in this a la carte menu in Baylor, Utah?
Nah.
No, not interested in that.
Yeah.
Michigan State, Maryland.
I don't really order a la carte much. I don't really know what it means.
Some crab
it's
cakes.
Fancy for me. Just give me like 3 appetizers. No
crab
Maryland. Cakes
on little mini swords. How about
Sounds
that?
Good, but no.
How about Biff Poggi, Pogo, whatever, and Charlotte on the road at North Carolina. North Carolina's not been good. That honestly might be a Power 5 upset.
Our buddy Shane Connick told me earlier today he'd be there.
Shane Connick. I know that. Is Shane a UNC Charlotte grad? Because there's no other reason.
He went to Maryland.
Oh, that's right.
He went to Maryland. No, I think they cover. The Observer has to get Charlotte, so he's writing. I think he's going to be in Chapel Hill.
You think that by week 2 you're starting to get into some decent football games, but I think this week 2 slate might be worse than week 1 overall.
100%.
Yeah, the answer has got to be South Carolina, Kentucky.
It is. However,
that's the most fascinating game, honestly, out of every game in the country.
Auburn?
No, not interested in that. That game, by the way, started at 10. The South Carolina Kentucky started at 10. It's been bet down to 8.5.
That's a significant move.
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting one. South Carolina, they got the talent. Lenora Sellers. Not only just for the local flavor, and obviously we're interested. We got a lot of Gamecock fans in the audience, but I mean, Kentucky is always trying to take that next step.
I have an issue there. If we watch that game, and we'll take a break and come back to the later slate games in a second. But if if you and I go to Clemson tomorrow to cover Clemson App State, how are we gonna watch 3:30
press box?
Yeah, but it opened until 5.
We'll find somebody with a TV and a 6-pack of beer. How about that? We got one more time slot to go with. We're not gonna watch those 10:30 games. Let's be real.
No,
none of us.
No, we'll be in
bed. We'll be in bed.
No, we won't.
Not together. I'm just saying.
And you won't be in bed at 10:30. You'll still be in Clemson.
Yeah.
That game won't end until 11:30.
7 o'clock, South Florida, Alabama. Interested?
No.
Nope. No teaser there. Sanford, Florida. Now, honestly, that might be a game. They didn't even put a line on. This one blows me away because ESPN's putting a line on everything these days. Samford at Florida, putting the Gators on upset alert again. Let's do it.
There's no way that game's closed, right?
Samford, Samford lost 38-29 against West Georgia.
Jeez.
Who in the hell is West Georgia? You can't lose to a directional school.
This is a get right
you've
game.
Never heard of.
Florida's back.
Gotta be.
Florida's back.
Gotta be. Any interest in let's see, how about Virginia Wade?
These are the 7 o'clock.
Yeah, the 7 o'clock games suck tomorrow.
No. Well, okay.
The only one that's interesting is Tennessee, NC State.
No. I found another one.
Huh?
I want to watch Dion primetime.
Ooh, that's when we got an actual debate here. Actual debate: Tennessee, NC State, or Colorado, Nebraska. What's more interesting to you?
God, that's a tough one. You know what? I'll probably turn it on Colorado.
I think Colorado, Nebraska is going to be a closer game. I think NC State's going to get their asses kicked.
Oh God,
blown out. A Josh Heupel offense. Nico, they're gonna name the score on them. I'm predicting it.
You think so?
I'm predicting it 45-14.
Oh,
45-14.
What has the Wolfpack done to you?
A lot. A lot, actually.
That is bad. That is really, really bad. That would not be good. We'll continue the conversation. Get your thoughts. A lot of text to get to 71307. Start your text with the word fan.
Tiger Pal Rachel Cole throwing some shade at you. She asked why we didn't do the 5 o'clock fight at 5 o'clock. The real answer is that, we're just trying to shake things up a little bit, try some new things. We're still going to do the 5 o'clock fight on Wednesdays when we're out at Ingles.
Yeah.
But she said, I figured Cole was just tired of all the sweeping that Diesel did.
That's not funny. That's not funny. That's that little shot to the heart. No, it is funny. It's a good one. That's a good one. I like it. I like the shot. All right, Diesel, we looked at the weekend menu for college football. I ask you the question, and I asked the Tolos the question as well. I want one answer. You asked me one time slot. Pick one game per time slot. However, I'm going to ask you as
Honestly,
well as
that
the
might
Tolos.
be all there is. A lot of these time slots.
It's true. Fair point.
You watch a full screen game for the first time ever.
I want, though, because this is a short segment, we're short on time, and we're going to run in just a few moments. Not one game per time slot, but one game in total. NFL version. So we'll have to flip over to the NFL scores this weekend. Also from you, Tolo, 71307. Start your text the word fan. The question is, one game that you're looking forward to the most this weekend. It cannot be Chiefs-Ravens because that game was last night. It was a good game. Chiefs 27, Ravens 20. The Chiefs start off 1-0 to start the 2024 season. But there are some other good games this weekend. And you, the Tolos, you, Diesel, one game that if you only are allowed to watch one NFL game the entire weekend, which, by the way, I'm so glad that college football and pros back. I mean, we're back, baby. We made it. One game this weekend, and you can only choose one to watch. Who do you take and why?
Ooh, I am probably going into the 1 o'clock time slot on Sunday. CBS, Jacksonville versus Miami.
Should be a good one.
Miami's favored by 3.5 in that one. It's got the in-state situation. I know it's in the NFL, and they don't really care about in-state rivalries. I mean, there's Texas in-state rivalries, California in-state rivalry, in Florida. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
That actually happened. Well, the New York, because they got the Jets and the Giants.
I'd say the Jet. Yeah, that's probably the best one.
Yeah. Could this be the year that Trevor Lawrence takes a step forward? I know we've been asking that for the last 3 years straight.
I like that game.
Tua got paid this offseason. He's got Tyreek. I think the Dolphins are going to have another really good football season. So, I'm looking across the board and I see some mismatches. I think the Texans are going to stomp the Colts.
Good. Very well, good.
Bengals are going to stomp the Patriots.
Oh,
this Panthers-Saints game might be a race to 9 points.
Diesel.
Cowboys, Browns, not interested. I know what game you're going to choose.
No, you don't. No, you do not.
I think Jacksonville, Miami has one of the more intriguing storylines.
It's definitely the best 1 o'clock game, and I agree with you. That should be a good one. I'll tell you this, man. Jacksonville needs this one. They really need it. They started off the season so well last year and just plummeted in 2023. I think Jacksonville really needs to get off on a good start this year. Now, mine came down to 2. And I don't know if this one's tough. Tonight, Monday night, Diesel. Those are the 2 that I'm looking at. Monday night, Aaron Rodgers against the San Francisco 49ers on Monday night. We all love Aaron, right? Right? We all love Aaron Rodgers. Not everybody at once. Okay, we don't. And then tonight, 8:15 in Brazil. Packers, Eagles. I think tonight's game.
Brazil.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that'll be maybe the best one, but other than Ravens Chiefs.
I want to know how much money the NFL has spent to educate the Brazilians on American football. I mean, have they been showing it in Brazil on television? Have they been exposed to it at all? Are they going to have a clue what's happening? I don't know. Because when you think about a foreigner watching that, it's like us trying to watch soccer for the first time. We're like, nobody scored. What's so interesting about this?
True.
Right? I mean, so you got to understand the nuance of the game to really appreciate the game in a lot of ways. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. When we come back, Cole, South Carolina on the road at Kentucky. Let's jump into that conversation. Is Shane Beamer capable of protecting his job with a win for this? Can he guarantee his job with a win
Guarantee
tomorrow against Kentucky? That's next. You heard it earlier, and you're going to hear it back here again in about another 20 minutes. Our conversation with Steven Garcia, former South Carolina Gamecock great quarterback, said that he believes Shane Beamer has done enough and that he is safe for the entire 2024 season.
That's a great conversation.
It was.
I think he's right.
You think so?
Yeah, I think I agree.
Okay, then we don't need to do this segment at all.
I really do. I think that Garcia looks at it from a very interesting standpoint of the Clemson and he referenced that Clemson Tennessee win, and he talked about those two wins buying Beamer time. And you know what? I think they did.
Yeah, but those were in 2022.
They were.
Those were over a year ago. This is a what have you done for me lately business.
Yeah, it is.
But I posed the question, Cole, and I would love to hear from the Tolos who are listening. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Again, you can still get your upset picks challenge picks in. Does a win against Kentucky guarantee Shane Beamer's job through the end of the season? Like, no matter what happens through the end of the year, if they beat Kentucky, is he safe? And on the flip side of that, if they lose to Kentucky, does that really start the clock for potentially making a move away from Shane Beamer in the middle of the season? And is that a move that Ray Tanner is willing to make?
So let me back up. I said I agree with Steven Garcia, right? And ultimately I do. However, Diesel, I will tell you, obviously, if things got bad, obviously there's a chance Beamer could be gone at the end of the season. I'm not saying it's a definite. There's no way it happens. I'm just saying I don't think it will. The reality of it is he's in a situation where it could. You asked a question about this weekend.
I mean, is Kentucky the type of program that, let's face it, is a better football program than South Carolina right now? Historically, no. South Carolina is the better football program, but right now, last 10 years or so, Kentucky is the better program. You are punching up when you're punching at Kentucky. That is an upset win.
They're favored by what?
Favored by 10 points. 8.5, I think, is what it's moved to.
Yeah.
But is that, does Kentucky hold enough goodwill? Like, that's one of those programs you should be beating.
Should be.
Every single year, but you haven't been.
Here's the problem. When you talk about Kentucky this weekend, you're right. They should be beating them year in and year out. However, when you look at the rest of their schedule, you almost feel like if they don't win Saturday, I mean, yeah, they're going to beat Akron. But they have LSU, Ole Miss, Bama, Oklahoma. Maybe they get A&M. A&M didn't look terrible the other day. Right. Vandy won. Missouri, you're not beating them.
I look at the Vandy game now, and I think that's a losable game.
That's what I'm saying. So my point is, yeah, it does add a lot of comfort to the seat of Shane Beamer in terms of his hot seat. Yeah. And when you talk about the end of the season, is it a possibility that Beamer could be fired? Sure, it's a possibility. I think Kentucky allows South Carolina to be in a very unique position, though, because you are 1-0. If you go 2-0 on the road at Kentucky, number one, it's an upset win, like you said, but then you're going to lose to LSU next week. But then you beat Akron, you're 3-1. 3-1 at the end of September, you get a bye before you play Ole Miss, which, I won't be. You're 3-1 going into October is my point.
Yeah, I mean, you look down the schedule, Vanderbilt's the only SEC game you should be favored in. And I'm not even sure that's going to be a heavy favorite. I mean, if I'm predicting a spread on that game right now, I'm saying that game is in Columbia, correct?
The A&M game is in Columbia.
No, the Vandy game.
Oh, Vandy game? Well, if it's not, it's in the parking lot up at in Nashville. It is at Vandy in Nashville, Diesel.
Ouch. Okay. And not that playing in a parking lot grants you any kind of home field advantage. At that point, I'm saying maybe South Carolina favored by 4.5, 5.5, maybe is what I would guess that opening line would be. And I'm trying not to be disrespectful to South Carolina, but Vanderbilt looked competent last week. I mean, I thought Virginia Tech was going to be a contender to go push for the ACC championship game, maybe not win the whole thing, but I expected a heck of a lot more and more out of them. I mean, if Virginia Tech had a defense, they would have won that game by 25 points.
The reality is, I do think it guarantees Shane Beamer's job through the end of the season. And when you look at Ray Tanner's evaluation of Shane Beamer, Diesel, I don't think Ray Tanner expects Beamer to beat LSU, Ole Miss, Bama, Oklahoma.
God, that's setting
Missouri,
the bar so low.
Clemson, that's 7. I know it is.
So you're saying
I don't think he expects to win.
You're telling me right now that if you're Ray Tanner, 2-6 in the conference, that's if you beat Kentucky. 2-6 in the conference gives you those warm, tingly feelings enough to keep writing checks.
Not warm, tingly feelings. No,
I mean, I know you got to look at it through a realistic lens, right? I mean, you can't say, "Well, how come you're not out there going 6-2?" Well, coach, we're in the SEC, and everybody has a first-digit 1 in front of their name that we're playing, or a first-digit 0 in front of their name.
They're ranked
05 in the country, 07 in the country, 08 in the country.
Right.
I get it, but like at some point, you have to start raising those standards.
You do have to. I'm completely with you. You do have to raise the standards. However, I don't, and that is literally what you just said is the reason why South Carolina is such a tough place to go coach and win games. You're right. You don't lower the standard. However, when you look at the talent that you have, you don't have a better quarterback than Jackson Dart. You don't have a better quarterback than Jalen Milroe.
Nope.
You don't have a better quarterback. Well, you might against Clemson. We'll see. That game's TBD, right? TB freaking
God,
D.
what does that say about Cade Klubnik? Right now, after one game, we're saying you guys might be on even footing.
But I'm saying, ultimately, yes, you do expect to take the next step. And that is why I think, Diesel, South Carolina is one of the toughest jobs to win in the country. You're at a disadvantage. The margin for error is so thin, right? You can't go up against the Ole Misses of the world and Alabamas with the guys that you have.
Yeah, but you can't go up against Ole Miss now. We're talking, if you look back and say 5, 10, 15 years ago, you were a better program than Ole Miss.
Sure.
Ole Miss was one of those. Ole Miss couldn't win squat.
No, it was
They
Spurrier.
were an awful football program and have been for a long time. And you let that program surpass you.
Well, I could argue that Lane Kiffin has a lot to do with that, right?
Well, I'm sure he does. Wesley Roberts on the stream says not just hating as a Clemson fan, but what has Shane Beamer done to make South Carolina fans proud? Wesley, that's not fair. That's not fair, and you know it. That's not fair, and you know it. He beat Clemson. He beats Tennessee.
He beat Clemson, Tennessee back-to-back weeks.
Yep.
What, 2 years ago?
Yep.
Those are big wins. Like, those are huge wins.
Doesn't Shane Beamer have another top 10 win somewhere? Or am I thinking all of those were Muschamp, like the Georgia wins?
You might be right.
Doesn't he have another one? He has another one, I think. I could be wrong about that. Apologies to you Gamecock fans. We're not, can't pull that stuff out of the ether. I feel like he's got another big win under his belt. Maybe not in the same season, but in the previous year, maybe his first year at South Carolina. I mean, Shane Beamer has done things that South Carolina fans can be proud of. And Shane Beamer has done a lot to repair some of what Will Muschamp did and neglected over his past 2 seasons.
He has. And look, the consistency, Shane Beamer, okay, let's talk about Kentucky. Shane Beamer's done well against Kentucky, right? Ole Miss is a program that has, to your point, has gotten a lot better. He had a marquee win over Florida, 40-17 in 2021. The way they went out there and Dan Mullen they absolutely drugged Dan Mullen's team, right? And that was the decline of Dan Mullen, but that was a very, very dominant win. They did beat A&M in 2023, the first ever win over A&M for ever. And then 63-38 over Tennessee. Diesel, they didn't beat Tennessee. They exposed Tennessee, right? And then the next week, what do? They end the biggest win streak ever in Clemson football history, 31-30 in 2022. I'm not saying that Beamer deserves another contract. Look, you said it earlier. Yes, you want to have expectations, but you also at the same time have to look at it realistically. Does Ray Tanner believe that Beamer should go out there this year and be able to beat Ole Miss, LSU, Bama, maybe Oklahoma, Missouri? No. There's 3 or 4 teams that Ray Tanner knows they're not beating.
So here's another reality, Cole, is the the clock is ticking, right? Shane Beamer's contract runs through December 2027. Never does an athletic director allow a contract to just expire and say, oh, okay, now it's January 1st, 2028. We're going to go ahead and let you go and move on. They don't do that way, right? Sure. Because you got transfer portal window, you've got recruiting season, all these things, right? So nobody ever makes it to the end of their contract. They always get let go a couple of months before or an entire year before. So now we're talking about potentially end of the season 2026. We're talking a year out from his contract, or you better just go ahead and extend him, right? So now we're looking into the future.
It's a big year.
And do we see anything getting tremendously better in the 2025 and 2026 seasons? Obviously, we don't know what the conference slate is going to look like, but like, do you see some massive whirlwind coming down the pike? I mean, I know this is an uncomfortable place to be in if you're the athletic director of South Carolina.
I think what you're looking for, if you're Ray Tanner over these next few months, year, Diesel, to answer your question about his next extension, I think what you're looking for is stability and consistency, right? You're not going to go out and beat Alabama and Ole Miss. However, can you go beat Kentucky and A&M, right? Those are games you can win. You know what might be a winnable game? You can be in the game in Oklahoma. I don't know. Maybe you can at least be competitive there and make it a game. You're going to beat Wofford. Hey, by the way, Diesel, there's a game. I don't know if you know this or not, or our Tolos know this. There's a game that happens the day or the Saturday after Thanksgiving, November the 30th, that if Beamer were to go win this year, you know what? He would probably get a contract extension, and he should. Yes, they're down.
Should. You're using the word should. A rivalry win should get you extended?
You go beat Clemson. Well, it's not just this year. You beat Clemson 2 out of 3 years. Yeah, you're beating Clemson like Spurrier used to beat him at that point. You beat him 2 or 3 years? I mean, 2 of 3 is pretty dang good. And you would obviously then be tied with Dabo in terms of head-to-head record. You know, not just Clemson. I want to say full package. If you go beat Kentucky, you beat A&M. So we're talking Kentucky's a second win. Akron's the third, right? A&M's the fourth. Vandy's the fifth. Wofford is the sixth. Diesel, you go beat Clemson. That's 7. You get into a bowl game. You win that. That's 8 wins. 8 wins with a win over Clemson at South Carolina. There is no doubt in my mind you should get an extension after that.
It's going to be interesting to watch.
It should be.
It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, South Carolina is certainly doing what they can in the out-of-conference scheduling to set it up so they can go at minimum, at worst, 2-2. I mean, I'm looking at next year, Virginia Tech in Atlanta, neutral site game, South Carolina State, Coastal, and Clemson. You should be set up there to go 3-1. I mean, with what we're seeing out of Virginia Tech, and I know that's a long way away. It's next year, different teams. But South Carolina, there's no reason you ought to be losing to Virginia Tech. You can't beat your chest and say SEC if you're losing to Virginia Tech, a team that's losing to Vanderbilt. Transitive property doesn't apply, but fans love to bring it up anyway. 2026, Miami, Towson at Clemson. That's going to be tough. We have no idea what Miami's going to be 3 years from now. So you just don't know. But I mean, if they get that thing rolling now, you're potentially looking at a 2-2, depending on who that second FCS game is, or that week G5 game. So
JD on the text line says, Beamer got our first win against A&M. It's ugly football. We get blown out a lot, but I'm good with moving on. But I'd prefer the continuity. Absolutely, Cole. If that's the case, 1-year extension. It's a tough place, man. You're stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because you said it earlier. How do you evaluate it if you're Ray Tanner? And that's the question. But let's ask Steven Garcia. We'll see what he thinks. Also talk a little Gamecock and Tiger football Diesel with Matt Smith, old Smitty of Sports Talk Media Network. I can't speak all of a sudden. Matt Smith, Sports Talk Media Network, Steven Garcia. We talked to them. We'll have that interview for you next.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools. I thought it was my stomach. People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Hey, this is Cole Bryson. It's the most wonderful time of the year. That's right, high school football season is here, and for the best coverage in the upstate, tune into the Saturday Morning Scramble. Each and every Saturday, we will have instant reaction interviews from players and coaches, and we will take your phone calls. Join me and Alex Guest from 8 to 10 a.m. on 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, 97.7 FM in Greenville, and on the free Odyssey app. All brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union and your local Eagles.
The ball's in your court. Sound off now at 844 fan phone.
We're going to talk a little South Carolina Gamecocks, a little Clemson Tigers to get you ready for the weekend. South Carolina taking the road trip up to Lexington, Kentucky. Clemson Tigers hosting Diesel's App State Mountaineers. He'll be there. I'll be there in full force. We'll see if App State can keep it close tomorrow night in Death Valley. Want to bring in Matt Smith, good friend of the program, Sports Talk Media Network. Does a lot of great work on Sports Talk with Phil Kornblut. Appreciate Matt Smith taking time to join us. It's hard. It's weird calling you Matt Smith, Smitty. I've always called you Smitty, and I'll always call you Smitty. But of the South Carolina Lexington matchup this week, with them in Lexington, them in Kentucky, and Clemson hosting App State, which matchup do you find more fascinating this weekend?
Boy, that's a dead heat because Clemson has to have this one, and I think as importantly, Clemson has to they need to find out, look in the mirror, who they're going to be offensively. They need to know whether Cade Klubnik is the answer. A lot of pundits, I mean a lot, think he is not. He's taken a real beating. They need to decide whether they're running what Dabo Swinney envisions Clemson's offense should look like, or what Garrett Riley brought in from TCU, what he sees in his dreams, the playbook that he brought, that where the Horned Frogs dropped 51 points against Michigan. He was supposed to bring that playbook, that kind of excitement to Clemson, and it's been quite the opposite. They look a lot the way they did under Brandon Streeter. A lot has not changed. As many as the names have changed, a lot hasn't changed. And so, and obviously South Carolina, Kentucky is fascinating as well because Lenore Sellers' first road start, we have to find out now, was that just a dress rehearsal, that awful hot garbage that we saw offensively from South Carolina, how much they improved from week 1 to week 2, and what are they going to be on offense long term? Is it going to be a Rocket Sanders offense? Is Lenore Sellers going to be a balanced quarterback, or is Lenore Sellers going to be a run-first quarterback like we saw last week in his debut against Old Dominion? So I think they're both interesting. I had no idea Diesel was an App State man, a Mountain man. Now, Diesel, did Diesel go to App State?
Yes, I did.
Go to a party school? Okay,
Yeah.
That's
why it took me 5 years to get out of there, Matt.
I would have stayed for 6 for sure. I love partying at App State, man. And I'll tell you what, Cole was just asking about which game is more interesting. I mean, I think the nation is going to be paying attention to what happens with App State and Clemson. I thought Dabo Swinney said it best when he said that upsets are woven in to the DNA of Appalachian State. That is 100% accurate. I think that is just who they are. App State can do a lot of good things offensively. They're not great on the offensive line. That's the rumor this year. They're going to be at a deficit there against Clemson's, against Peter Woods and Clemson. But here's what App State does do. App State creates a game plan under Sean Clark, creates a game plan to win the game they're in. They beat Texas A&M on the road 2 seasons ago, and they did it in a rock fight. It wasn't their style of fight, but it didn't matter. It's like fighting Rocky. Rocky, you might beat Rocky, like Apollo Creed beat Rocky in the first Rocky. Clubber Lang got him in Rocky 3. Guess what? You're gonna go the distance, or he's gonna come back out, and you're gonna be hurt. Clemson's going to be hurt. Clemson's going to be punched in the mouth Saturday. I'm fascinated to know if they have the character to respond and win this game by multiple scores, or if Appalachian State is going to keep it tight in the fourth quarter and have those Clemson fans sitting on their hands. I'll be there. To me, that's fascinating. Diesel, being an App State fan, kind of a cool thing. You're a giant killer, and every 2 years you get one of these shots, and you brought home a lot of big-time wins. I don't think you get one here, but I think in the fourth quarter, we're all on Twitter talking about this game.
Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media joins us here on the Fan Upstate, covers Clemson. It's kind of tough to gauge the opponent that App State played last week. I mean, East Tennessee State, vastly different talent level than what Clemson is going to be facing them with. But they put up 183 yards rushing on App State last week. So, yeah, the defensive line kind of gave up some big plays there against an inferior opponent. App was a little better against the pass, only gave up 122 through the air. What do you expect the emphasis to be for Clemson offensively against App State? Where do you see them most trying to attack?
I think, and this has actually nothing to do with the Mountaineers defense. I think Dabo Swinney is looking to make sure the psyche of this team is intact. He wants to come out this week and impose the Clemson will and put his imprint on Clemson football again. And they want to do that with Phil Maffa. In my mind, there is no question that Clemson wants to be a running football team. I think the question we all have as observers, are they good enough along the offensive line to bully everybody? That's who they want to be. And by the way, that's who they were when they were at their best. They were actually bullying teams when Wayne Gallman was in the backfield and they had Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Yes, they were making big plays in the passing game, but every defensive coordinator had to commit personnel to the run. I don't know that Dabo Swinney and Garrett Riley are fully on the same page. I say that, I don't think they're arguing. I just think that Garrett Riley, in his mind, he's an air raid guy in his soul. And that's what he believes is the best way to move the football, put points on the board, and win championships. Dabo Swinney, in his soul, thinks the best way to do it is to make sure you can establish the run, and then you attack downfield with the passing game. And I think that kind of battle of wills right there is so fascinating between those two. And again, I don't think it's an argument. I just think they're trying to run Garrett Riley's playbook with Dabo Swinney's personality. And who has to make it all come together? The chef in there has to be Cade Klubnik. I'll leave it to you two to decide if Cade Klubnik is good enough to lead them to the promised land. I think if we took a vote right now, it's an election season, you took a vote among Clemson fans, they'd say Cade Klubnik's not good enough. He doesn't have the goods. But I think we'll find out a lot more about him this week and then on when they get into conference play.
Hey, Smitty, we're going to run a little early. We'll catch back up next Friday with you if that's okay. A little scheduling conflict with you and Steven Garcia, but we're going to catch up with you again next Friday if that's good with you.
Absolutely. Everybody check out this weekend, sportstalksc.com.
Yes.
I'll be covering Clemson App State. Phil Kornbluth's in Lexington right now covering Kentucky and South Carolina. Looking forward. I'll listen to the rest of the show, guys. Talk later.
Thank you so much, Smitty. We appreciate you, man. We'll catch you Saturday. He said he'll be in Clemson.
Yeah, we'll see him face to face.
We'll see him in Clemson on Saturday. Appreciate Smitty's time. Again, Smitty with Sports Talk Media Network. We did have another guest today scheduled for around the same time, and we know he has a busy schedule, so we appreciate him making time for the program today. He is former Gamecock great Steven Garcia, joins the program now right here on Wire to Wire. Steven, how you doing, man? Good to catch up with you.
I'm doing good, man. I see the Furman flag back there. I like it.
We do carry Furman here at the Fan Upstate. Furman football, every game can be heard right here on the Fan Upstate. Obviously a tough one, going to Oxford last Saturday for Furman. I don't know really your days of playing, if you're in a situation like Clay Hendricks was last Saturday, having to take a Furman team to go to Oxford. I don't really know how you pep talk your team. Maybe you were a pretty good motivator. What do you say to them?
Let me get a Zen real quick. Appreciate it. I think that's exactly what I would tell them. Let me get a Zen real quick. And maybe a cold beer or something. Yeah,
it's gonna be tough.
You're kind of going into a buzzsaw, and Look, I mean, I'm a South Carolina guy. We got to play Ole Miss in, I guess, 2 weeks or next week. It's going to be a tough battle. Yeah, they got a machine. Lane Kiffin's got the offense rolling. It's going to be a different situation, man. It's college football is weird these days. It is very weird. But at the end of the day, man, like that's what these kids sign up for.
Yep.
You know, you sign up to play in big time games against heavier opponents, and I know a couple guys that play at Furman, and that you kind of get fired up. I would hope you do to play against these kind of opponents. So.
Steven, can you recall a game that you were in a situation like that where you were just vastly outmatched? And I don't know how many times it happened to you, probably not very often, but just a game where things weren't going your way and how you as the expected leader of that football team took it upon yourself to keep guys in, focused and in the pocket, even when things were kind of going badly.
I mean, it's hard, especially when you play for a guy like Steve Spurrier that loves to control everything. I try my best to kind of keep everybody kind of gelled and controlled. But, when am I allowed to cuss on this thing?
No.
No, this is live radio. We are on live radio as well.
Okay, yeah. When stuff goes bad, it's hard. It's hard, but at the same time, and you got to be able to respond. There's going to be adversity, and no matter who you're playing against, and you just got to be able to respond. That's what you practice for. That's what you're there for. I mean, it's that simple. You just got to be able to pick yourself up and, move on to the next play. Short memory.
Absolutely. He is Steven Garcia joining us right here on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate 97.1 Spartanburg, 97.7 Greenville, anywhere in the world on the Odyssey app. Steven, South Carolina, I know you still are involved with the program. You still follow them, obviously, former Gamecock yourself. What do you look at when you saw how they did against Old Dominion? Lenora Sellers had a good night on the ground, but in terms of the passing game, how do you as a former quarterback judge what you saw on Saturday night?
It was tough to watch, but it's his first career start. Granted it's against Old Dominion, but I mean those guys play with a massive chip on their shoulder. These guys are also thinking, why am I here? I should be playing in an SEC school. I should be at a higher level. It's when you play against those kind of teams, those guys get fired up. But yeah, as far as like watching that game, I think he's got a little bit of first game jitters, and I know he said that. But running the ball 22 times. That's you don't have a very long career doing that.
Steven, what did you see in practice over the course of the off season? And I don't know how much game film you got to study of Lenora Sellers, but what have you seen from him off the field and out of game situations that you like that maybe just didn't quite translate to that first performance?
Well, what I can say is, and I only saw the first two practices of fall camp, and what I can see and what I saw, whatever, he is the leader of that program. He's the leader of that team, and those guys look up to him. And that's a tough position to be in as a redshirt freshman. I mean, that's when you got grown men that are looking at you to kind of lead the program. It's not an easy task, and with all the amount of NIL the guys are paying, and he's got a lot of stuff on his shoulders. So it's a tough predicament, and I think he's only going to get better.
It's fascinating when you talk about his development, and I agree with you. I think he will get better. Big picture-wise, Steven, we appreciate you taking time to hop on with us, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, but big picture-wise, when you look at Shane Beamer now in his fourth season, you were there in a time period where you had the best of the best in terms of the coach, Steve Spurrier, what he did at South Carolina. Everybody knows how successful he was there. But when you look at Shane Beamer in his fourth season, big picture-wise, do you feel like this is a year where he really has to have wins against teams like Kentucky, who he plays tomorrow night on the road?
1,000%. And I think he knows that. I think the entire staff knows that. It ain't easy. It's just not easy. But, I mean, he's beaten teams before. He beat, Tennessee when they were, I think, 4th or 5th ranked 2 years ago, and then beat Clemson the year or the next week. And I think that definitely saved him some time. But that being said, I mean, it's it's a very hot seat at all times. I mean, you got to win games. I mean, I'm sure Dabo's on the hot seat at this point.
Shane, I don't want to pit you against the fan base here, but do you believe that Shane Beamer is safe over the entire course of the season, basically no matter what happens, or do you think that? Yeah,
I do. I think he's done enough, and I think the program's in the right direction. But yeah, I think he's got another year. And listen, I love Shane to death. But that being said, it's you got to win ball games. At the end of the day, you have to win ball games, and it's not easy. But that's why they pay you the big bucks.
Sure. We're talking to Stephen Garcia right here on Wire to Wire on the Fan Upstate. Stephen, I got to know, I love this video that I saw, this podcast where I saw Gamecock greats and Stephen Garcia, Connor Shaw, Steve Tannehill. I mean, the conversations, obviously you talk about cussing on these airwaves. We're on local radio, so you can't. But I'm sure that that those conversations are mighty juicy. Talk about what you guys have been doing lately.
And you know what? It's actually awesome. Me and Pat DeMarco, my old teammate, old roommate, played 10 years in the league, and he reached out to me about 3 months ago and was like, "Hey, I want to start a podcast. I think you'd be great to do it." Because he's the structure guy, I'm the chaos guy, and it's a perfect blend. But getting all those guys together, Connor, Perry, Steve Tannehill, and Blake Mitchell. It's like I heard stories on that podcast that I had no idea that those guys were doing that. So it was very refreshing. It was very cool, and I the biggest thing that I took away was the competition between me and Connor, between Connor and Dylan. The competition that we had was we hated each other. Connor will never admit that, and we've talked off record. And I was like, dude, I freaking hated you. Like, you wanted my position, I wanted Blake Mitchell's position, but that's what made that quarterback room go. It made the whole thing tick. And don't think for 1 second that the rest of the team didn't feel that energy. So when you have that kind of competition in the QB room, and then you have that kind of competition in the other positional rooms, that's when you have a good football team. Instead of everybody being friends, like, you don't have to always be friends. You just don't.
Stephen Garcia joining us here live on the Fan Upstate. As somebody who's lived and breathed South Carolina Gamecock football now for the last decade or more, what is it that's just baked into the DNA of the fan base of South Carolina that keeps them so loyal? I know obviously you were there when times were really good, and times haven't been as good the past couple of seasons. What is it that's baked into that DNA that you can maybe try to put a finger on that keeps them so loyal?
I think bourbon or IPAs.
That's a fair answer.
It's a good answer, but I mean, at the same time, like, there is no professional sports in that area. I mean, these people are the most loyal MFers that you can imagine, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I would get booed in 5 seconds, and then they'd be asking for autographs the next, and that's kind of the way it goes. And I personally loved it, and I wouldn't trade anything for the world for it.
Stephen, before we let you go, you mentioned the podcast with you and some Gamecock greats. Any stories that you're even that can be yours that are able to be shared on live radio?
Live radio, probably not.
I was just trying to get one good story out of you before we let you go.
Man. I'm literally trying to think, and it's hard to say something edited. Yeah, the stuff that we talked about and the stuff that we were doing. I mean, that's when college football, there wasn't any Snapchat, there wasn't any social media, there wasn't any NIL. I mean, it was just guys being dudes and just playing ball, and just the ultimate competition. And look, you wanted to play, I want to play. We're gonna figure this out one way or another. And I think that's why we had so much success. And that's one thing that I didn't get along with Coach Spurrier, and that's pretty well documented. But the one thing that he did, and I think Coach Beamer has this exact same kind of deal, is like, he demands perfection, he demands success, he demands something at a certain level. And Spurrier definitely has a different way of saying it, especially to the media, as opposed to Coach Beamer. But I feel like that's kind of what kids need, man. They need a kick in the rear end these days.
Stephen Garcia right here with us on the Fan Upstate. My last question for you we as fans, we can't even fathom what it's like, the pressure of a college athlete at a big-time D1 school, especially now when on top of all the other things that you're dealing with, classes, relationships, practices, games, now you're adding potentially hundreds of thousands or even $1 million decisions onto 20, 21-year-old kids. I have no doubt saying that, Steven, you'd probably be a multimillionaire right now if NIL existed while you were playing at South Carolina. What do you think your reaction would have been? Put yourself back into those 21-year-old shoes. If a big-time program comes at you with $1 million offer to say, hey, we know you're there in South Carolina. We know you love it there, but why don't you come here instead?
I get asked this question often, and my response is I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. I would probably be in a ditch somewhere. Like you can't give me $1 million as a 18-year-old and expect me to abide by the rules. I barely abide by the rules as it is. You give me $1 million or a couple $100,000, I'm not doing a damn thing you say. And that's I say that in jest, but it's like I hear stories about some kids, some D linemen that are at Florida State, not to throw Florida State on the bus, but some of these D linemen that are, telling the coach to shut the hell up. Like, I'm making more money than you are. Like, that's a bad deal. That is a very, very slippery slope. And I'll tell you what, I heard this thing that Tom Brady said the other day, and he was like, there's no such thing as a program anymore. And I think as much as I dislike Clemson, I think Dabo Swinney is on this trend of things. It's like, there's no program, there's teams. You go to Clemson, you want to be in that Dabo Swinney program. Now it's with the NIL, it's like, what team can I play for that's going to pay me the most amount of money? And I think that sucks for the game. I do think that college players should be paid, but I don't think the amount of money of these guys, especially kids coming out of high school that haven't played a snap ever, should be getting paid that much money. I don't.
Steven, great stuff, man. We appreciate it. Let's do it again soon if you're up for it. Our listeners on our text line have already talked about how much they've enjoyed hearing you here in the upstate, and we appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely, man. Listen, last thing I'll say.
Yeah.
Despite my hatred for Clemson, I don't hate Clemson anymore, but I love Greenville. Greenville is one of the coolest cities I've ever been to, and I've been up there. I ran QB camps up there, and every single, whether it's a Carolina fan, Clemson fan, Georgia fan, whatever, they've always been absolutely awesome to me. It's actually really cool.
How about that? That is Steven Garcia. We appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon. You heard it from him. He said Greenville is one of the best cities in the upstate, and I agree with him. Appreciate him for hopping on with us, Diesel, as boy, was that fantastic. It was not enough, but we got what we could get, right?
We could have spent another hour with him, and I was just thinking, like, please don't cuss. Yeah. Please don't cuss. Please don't cuss. I'm like, I don't know how long Cole's headphone cable is, if he can get all the way back there without strangling himself. When we come back.
just an option, it's essential. That's where scale marketing comes in. We don't just help you compete, we make sure you win. Whether you're looking to grow, expand, or overcome stagnation, scale marketing is your performance marketing partner. We specialize in helping mid-sized B2C companies with teams of over 100 thrive. Scale marketing is a full-service agency offering expertise in performance marketing across traditional and digital platforms, creative production, and data analytics. We treat your money like it's our own, ensuring every dollar is spent with purpose and every decision is driven by data. Our knowledgeable team stays ahead of the trends, crafting strategies that align with your business goals. Partnering with scale marketing means gaining a dedicated strategist and a team committed to your success. If you're ready to lead the market, visit scalemarketing.com today. That's scalemarketing.com.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Diego.
Hi, Diego. It's Jennifer Coolidge. You know, I just want to say your cashback match makes me feel so special. It really inspired me.
That's great. Doubling the cashback you've earned at the end of your first year is what we do.
Well, I'm doubling everything now. Double dating, double dipping, double features, double headers, double whammy. You know, basically double or nothing.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
Hey, it's Tiki Barber. Superchargers, headlights, and more. With over 122 million parts, eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Stay on your A game with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Mom, meet Sarah.
Some first-time men moments.
Welcome to Flight 101.
To annual girls trip moments. Your can't-miss moments are worth protecting against RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV. And there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com.
So where should we go next?
Sponsored by Pfizer. At Lowe's, save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 10% when you buy a pallet or more of select concrete mix. And there's more. Save up to 25% when you buy a pallet or more of select drywall panels. Plus, get free same-day delivery to the job site when you order by 2 p.m. Because Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com/same-day delivery for details. Tonight, there is a slight chance of rain with a low of 64. Weather brought to you by Express Employment Professionals. Hire for logistics roles with Express Employment Professionals. They'll take care of recruiting, interviewing, and more, and supply you with the workforce you need. Visit expresspros.com for a location. From the Angels Market Studio.
Let's state 97.7 FM Greenville. 97.1 FM
Nice.
I'm not scared. What, are you scared?
It's the best thing we heard today.
What a foolish idea.
It's 2024, week 2 of the college football season is upon us, and we've already got our potential for the best flop of the 2024 season already in week number 1. If you didn't see this, James Madison faced Charlotte in week 1, and quarterback Alonzo Barnett did a double backflip after going down on the field. It was absurd. It was over the top. Well, he's talked about the reaction that he's gotten on campus since engaging in said epic flop. Here's Alonzo.
That flop has been all over the place. It got played in class yesterday too, so that's a first for me. But I didn't anticipate it to get that much traction. I was just out there having a little bit of fun.
Go find that flop. It's absolutely fantastic. Alonzo Barnett, he's a quarterback for James Madison, a program that, well, we'll see if it's a super strong program or not. Kirk Cignetti is now at Indiana, and he took a lot of the players that he had on his roster at James Madison with him. So we'll see if they're able to recover. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Appreciate you, Tolos, getting in your very late upset picks. We've got a couple of those that are still rolling in. Remember, guys, we copy and paste all of them. We've got all of them, so don't worry. We've got your picks written down. We appreciate Dan B and the work that he does to get that thing organized and put together on a weekly basis. Got a couple of big games to watch tonight. Obviously, I think a lot of people are going to be watching the NFL game, Green Bay and Philadelphia in Sao Paulo, Brazil. First time of the year, I think I would say, yeah, I'm going to sit and watch NFL football over college football. Duke, Northwestern, meh. BYU, SMU, meh. Not really super keen on watching either one of those football games. So I, like you, Tolos, will be tuning in and watching NFL from Sao Paulo, Brazil. I wonder how the Brazilian residents, the Sao Pauloans, are going to take to watching NFL football. I mean, took some of these NFL games in Europe a little bit of time to get traction for the locals there to learn the game. So the ultimate question is, what's the environment going to be like? There's going to be, of course, a lot of Americans who make their road trip, who make their flights down there to Brazil to be at this game. I just wonder how much the locals are going to be super into it or not. I hope that they've spent some time learning the game. I hope the NFL has done their homework and has broadcast some NFL games there. Certainly would have helped in my mind if the NFL had started a franchise and had already gotten this thing kind of off the ground by doing franchises in Mexico. Maybe the Brazilians would be a little more on board with the Mexico City team. Either way, I think it's going to be a fantastic display. There's been certainly some concerns about security there in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Some jokes, some memes, of course, going out about that, saying these Philly players really worried about security in Sao Paulo. They're from Philly. Don't they know just how bad the crime is in Philadelphia? If you can survive in Philly, you can survive in Brazil. You Tolos, again, who have gotten your upset picks in, you got about 1 minute left to hit us up at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Give us your name, give us your game and the spread. Just the facts. Called in during the commercial break and got his pick in for Colorado over Nebraska. Very popular choice. I took Arkansas to upset Oklahoma State. A lot of people like Oklahoma State as a potential challenger in the Big 12. Utah is certainly looked at as the favorite in that conference, but a lot of people looking at Oklahoma State as a possibility. They didn't look particularly great in their first game. So this is an opportunity for a get right for Oklahoma State. They should beat Arkansas. There's a reason they're favored in this game. The question is, are they who we think they are? We'll talk to you on Monday. Wrap up college football, South Carolina, Kentucky, Clemson, App State. Any upsets? I hope. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Talk to you Monday right here on the Fan Upstate.